Chapter 1268. She was only concerned about the other person and didn't care about herself at all. Qin Mo didn't like her behavior, and even more so, he didn't like her affecting his emotions. Bo Jiu glanced at him, suddenly understanding his actions. She reached out and hugged his waist, smiling faintly. "Brother Mo, you're concerned about me." Qin Mo's gaze froze. He couldn't turn his head away and scoffed. He pinched her hair between his fingers and said flirtatiously, "Aren't you my sugar daddy? Of course I have to care. Otherwise, who would give me money to spend? You seem rather familiar with your position." Bo Jiu coughed as she spoke, the smile on her face never fading. Qin Mo frowned. "What's wrong with your body? It wouldn't be like this if it was just a fever." "Asthma." Bo Jiu was indeed having trouble breathing. Qin Mo watched her, an inexplicable sense of irritation in his chest. Regardless of his motive for being by her side, he didn't like to see his plaything in such a state. "You can't breathe?" "A little." It wasn't too serious. Bo Jiu was aware of her body condition. Qin Mo held onto her waist, lifting her upwards. "Let's change the way you breathe." Before Bo Jiu could finish her sentence, he lowered his head and kissed her. The minty breath seemed to be able to lower her body temperature. The air in her mouth was so fresh it made her yearn for it. Kissing was an addictive thing, especially when it was with the Almighty. Her breathing wasn't unbearable anymore. Just a little more and he would kiss her again, his fingers caressing her ears. Gently, as though he was treating a pet. Her heart was beating erratically. That seemed to be the most beautiful part. When the kiss ended, he pressed his forehead against hers, his breathing unstable, his gaze deep. "It's sweet and satisfying." What did he mean by sweet and satisfying? In the past, the Almighty would never say that. Bo Jiu's face heated up, the discomfort from her illness alleviated. But at this moment, she realized she was completely naked. Even though she was wrapped in a fur-colored bath towel, it was just a thin layer. It wasn't useful at all. The Almighty's chest was right in front of her. The lines were clear, as if they had been carved out. When he stood up, the mermaid lines were even more obvious. But his hands just hugged her, his fingers caressing her softness, and his eyes were filled with vampire-like wickedness. Yes, and very smooth. The numbness brought about by the skin contact made her legs lose some of their original strength. In the past, Bo Jiu had never known that getting close to someone like this would be unbearable. But now that she was in his arms, just by looking at her, her heart would beat very fast, and every movement would cause a wave of numbness. Because this was none other than her pet. "You used to call me an idiot when we were young." Qin Mo arched a brow. "Oh." Bo Jiu replied, "At that time, I really wanted to buy you. I even smashed the piggy bank that I had saved for a long time just to get my hands on you. I even asked you how much a kilo was worth." Qin Mo smirked. "Are you an idiot? Do you think people are sold by weight?" When Bo Jiu heard this, she paused, breaking into a smile. The exquisite little boy in her memory frowned like a prince. "Little Bo Jiu, are you an idiot? Do you think people are sold by weight?" It was the same, even if she had lost her memory. Chapter 1269. With that, Qin Mo's kiss landed on her neck again. Every kiss was slightly cold. Even after his body temperature had recovered, his skin was like a porcelain jade that melted in the touch. He pressed against her body without any distance, but he didn't take another step forward. The darkness in his eyes made him look more mischievous. "Shall we sweat in another way?" Bo Jiu looked into his eyes, her consciousness fading. Her eyelashes trembled and the air she exhaled became hotter. Qin Mo's gaze deepened as he carried her. Wherever his fingers brushed past, Bo Jiu couldn't help arching her back. It was as he had said, just to sweat. Hence, he didn't take any further actions. After making her blush, he would only chuckle in her ear and lick her lips lightly. Gradually, drowsiness overtook her. Bojo tilted her head and closed her eyes slowly. Chin Mo looked at the person who had fallen asleep in his arms, his gaze deepening. Forget it. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. It didn't matter where he went. He could leave when he was no longer interested. My sugar daddy, how long will you keep me interested? Chin Mo laughed, his fingers still playing with the youngster's black hair, his lips curving into a devilish smile. She wasn't without merits. At least this guy smelled good. The feeling in his arms was good too, her entire body was warm. It was completely different from the coldness on his body. Chin Mo raised a brow, placing his chin on the youngster's head. He held her with one hand and observed her in his arms. She was so sick that she shouldn't be aggressive anymore. But Chin Mo knew that this wasn't her original self. Because no one would dare to confront more than 10 speedboats like that. She lit a lighter and blew things up as she pleased. Even her posture looked good. It was rare to see such a well-behaved person. Indeed, at this moment, Bojo was very well-behaved. She looked like a little prince when she was quiet. Even her pure black hair hung down, covering her ears and eyes. Only the porcelain white curve of her chin could be seen. Chin Mo looked at her for a moment, tilting his head and kissing the top of her head. After this action, Chin Mo froze. Then he frowned, a faint coldness in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. The night sky outside the window gradually surged. Because it had never been polluted, the starry sky outside was very beautiful. It's easy to fall asleep. Especially when he was carrying someone in his arms. He didn't feel cold. In the latter half of the night, the temperature of the person in his arms increased. It was so high that Chin Mo, who had fallen asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. Without any unnecessary movements, his first reaction was to place his hand on her forehead. When he felt the scalding heat, he turned to look at Bojo. His eyes darkened even more. He got up from the bed and walked out of the room half naked without even putting on a jacket. The sky is dark now. The boss was a local, and he was drinking downstairs. He probably had an appointment with a few of his friends, so he hadn't left yet. Chin Mo didn't stop and walked over. Do you have alcohol here? The boss glanced at Chin Mo but didn't reply. He continued to drink his wine, talking and laughing. Just as he was about to lean forward and put a peanut in his mouth. There was a swoosh sound. A poker card stabbed into the back of his hand. Blood flowed out instantly. Even though it wasn't a lot, the boss's entire face changed from the pain. The person sitting opposite him stood up abruptly, probably wanting to hit Chin Mo's head. But the moment he raised the bottle, his wrist was grabbed. It was just a little force. Bang! He fell straight onto the ground. The expressions of the three people changed. Especially the boss, he looked at his hand, his gaze wavering. Chin Mo held onto the handle of the chair, his lips curling up slightly. His voice rang beside the boss's ear like an elegant devil. Do you have alcohol here? Yes, yes, yes. The boss held onto his hand. I'll get it for you now. Chin Mo smiled in satisfaction. Thank you. The boss trembled when he heard the two words. This man was really scary. Originally, the boss didn't take them seriously because they weren't locals. But now, he didn't dare to neglect them anymore. This devil-like man didn't look like the weak and frail person he had when he was leaning on the youngster. Even though he was smiling, it sent chills down one's spine. They subconsciously obeyed his orders. Besides the alcohol, Chin Mo also brought a basin of hot water upstairs. Before he left, he said, "There's someone up there who's sick. He needs to rest and recuperate, so it's better not to make any unnecessary movements." The boss was startled. He hurriedly replied, "Yes." The pain on the back of his hand made him lose all his temper. The only person who wasn't injured came over. Who exactly is that person? He looks rather refined. How could he injure someone with poker cards? How would I know? If he knew, would he dare to be so reckless? Chin Mo brought the basin of hot water into the room. The door was locked with a long leg. Indeed, even with his upper body bare, Chin Mo was different from others. The nobility around him didn't dissipate. But because of the difference in his eyes, there was a hint of darkness mixed in. He glanced at Bojio, who was lying on the bed. He took a towel, dipped it in the hot water, and placed it on her fair forehead. The thermometers here weren't clean. Even if the boss had one, Chin Mo didn't take it. For some reason, he had taken a candy from the snack counter at the front desk. At that time, he had been bored waiting for the hot water and had played with it in his hands. Now, he opened the packaging and used the end of the candy to touch the youngster's lips. Chin Mo didn't see any reaction from her. He leaned over and used his lips to pry open her lips. Then he pulled away, allowing her to bite the candy in his hands. She probably tasted the sweetness in her mouth. The youngster's thin lips moved. Her brows weren't frowning as badly as before. Chin Mo realized that he didn't like her unhappy expression. Since he had found a toy, the more exquisite it was, the better. Chin Mo reached out and took her hand. He dipped a cotton swab in alcohol and smeared it inch by inch on her joints. It wasn't just her hands, but her knees, her collarbone, her lower abdomen. Bojio, whose entire body was burning uncomfortably, couldn't sleep well. When she felt the comforting coolness, she couldn't help opening her eyes. The first thing she saw was the handsome and fair side profile under the light. His head was lowered, and she was the only one in his eyes. Coincidentally, it brushed against her long legs. It would have been better if she hadn't woken up. Once she woke up, all her senses returned. Waves of numbness and that pair of deep eyes. Her body seemed to have turned into a pool of water, scattering softly on the ground. Even her eyes were wet. Chin Mo looked at the youngster's flushed face and watery eyes. His hand paused. Maintaining that position, he leaned forward and planted a kiss on her collarbone. It was obviously different from before. His fingers were still in their original position. He slid down. The softness in his hand and the warmth of the jade on his body made his breathing unstable. But he still held it in. Even though it was a strange way of holding it in. But as a criminal psychologist, how could he lay his hands on his own toy? Since it was a toy, he could play with it or abandon it, but he couldn't do it to the end. Chin Mo paused at the last moment. He watched her glowing mole and smiled slowly. "My sugar daddy, you really can captivate me if you aren't careful." Bojio realized that he wasn't really willing to touch her. But her body was too cold and so was her consciousness. As she floated up and down, she closed her eyes again. After some time, she seemed to be pulled into someone's embrace. He could vaguely hear a voice ringing in his ears. It sounded a little arrogant. "It's already like this, why hasn't the temperature dropped? My sugar daddy, you better get better. This is the first time I've served someone like this." Bojio wanted to laugh when she heard that. Who would force someone to lower their fever? Besides, the Almighty, you're actually talking about me, right? For some reason, Bojio felt that the Almighty's tone was extremely similar to when they were young. It was probably because it was too comfortable to be hugged. At 3 in the morning, Bojio felt her back breaking out in sweat. Her long legs rubbed against the wall, but she didn't move. He pressed her down. "What's wrong?" "Hot." Bojio wanted to pull the blanket away when she said this. Chin Mo wrapped her up, preventing her from moving. He only said one word. "Sleep." But it was still hot. Bojio could only think of a way to absorb the coldness from his body. Chin Mo glanced at the person whose face was pressed against his chest. His eyes darkened and his fingers tightened. The entire night passed like this. When she finally quietened down, the hair on her forehead was drenched in sweat and stuck to her face. Chin Mo raised a brow. He felt the temperature on her forehead again. It wasn't as hot as before. Very good. He didn't want his toy to look so sickly. At around 4:30 p.m. Bo-jio was in a deep sleep. When she woke up, the sky was already bright. The sunlight shone through the window, splashing onto her face. When she turned her head, she saw the most intoxicating sleeping face in the world. Every time the Almighty fell asleep, he would remind her of the word holy. Be it when she was young or when she grew up. Bo-jio's gaze moved downwards. She saw the hand that was wrapped around her waist. The bed was indeed narrow. The two of them had to lie on their sides to sleep. It was also because of this that they were so close to each other that his breath could follow his movements and hit her ear. Then, something caught her attention. The one hanging around his neck seemed to be from that time. The moment Bo-jio reached out, he held onto her wrist. He flipped over, his breath falling. His gaze was heavy and his voice was seductive and hoarse. It seems like my sugar daddy doesn't know that the man in the morning can't be provoked. The next moment, Bo-jio felt the kiss landing on her shoulder. It was dense, with a slight bite. It made her heart beat faster. Even her mind was blank. The temperature in the room continued to rise. Until there was water on her body. That was when Bo-jio realized that he had carried her to the bathroom. He was still kissing her. He seemed to like her reaction. His thin lips were lifted. He allowed her to lean on him after she lost all her strength. Other than kissing, they didn't do anything else. But the numbness from his fingers made Bo-jio tremble slightly. But, she didn't understand why he stopped. Especially after he held onto her waist forcefully, he bit her shoulder. Then, his breath faded and he pulled the towel over. Did we get along like this in the past? His black hair was still dripping. Drop by drop, it landed on her collarbone. Bo-jio was wrapped in the towel. She waited for the heat to dissipate. Chin Mo smiled, but his expression couldn't be seen. Is that so? Bo-jio felt that the Almighty shouldn't have such a reaction. Just as she was about to speak, he glanced up, a devilish glint in his eyes. So my sugar daddy likes this type. It's a pity your body doesn't allow it, otherwise. Chin Mo leaned forward, his teeth biting her ear. His breath was still hot, but there wasn't a hint of warmth in his eyes. You can do anything. Bo-jio remained silent. That was because there was a clear knock on the door. The soundproofing in such a place wasn't good. Even with two doors separating them, the sound could still be heard. It was the boss. Breakfast is ready. If the two guests are awake, please come to the door to get it. Bo-jio arched a brow. Breakfast is provided in such a place. It wasn't her first time staying in such an inn. It was good enough that there was hot water. Why was there breakfast now? And the boss was here to deliver it. The naive Jill wouldn't have guessed that the boss had been frightened by the Almighty last night. Breakfast aside, the Manchu Han Imperial feast would probably be brought over. I'll go get it. Swoosh. Chin Mo opened the bathroom door, tossing two sets of clothes in before putting on a pair of black trousers. He looked especially handsome when he did all of this. Clean and cold. Compared to the Chin Mo of the past, he was indeed different. The moment he opened the door, the boss froze. The owner outside the door suddenly stiffened, and the hand holding the wooden plate trembled. The boss admitted that he had never seen such a handsome man, especially when his black hair was dripping with water. But that was why he resembled the devil in the comics. Especially his gaze, it was so cold it sent chills down her spine. The man seemed to be in a bad mood. It couldn't be. Could it be that he was stabbed again like last night? You can leave now. When there weren't any toys around, Chin Mo didn't care about his murderous aura. The boss trembled. Without another word, he passed the tray to the man and fled the scene. Now, he couldn't help but admire the youngster who had helped the man into the inn last night. Speaking of which, it was that young man who had given him the illusion that his friend's body was extremely weak and that he would feel pain if anything bumped into him. That was why the boss had thought that he was a noble vase. How was he a vase? He was clearly a devil. Chapter 1270. The breakfast was surprisingly sumptuous. The bread, fruits, and milk were all fresh. Bojo held on to the milk, watching the Almighty sitting in front of her. The conditions here didn't allow for a European-style dining table. It was just that the sunlight was too good. Even though one of them was standing and the other was sitting, the corners of their mouths were filled with sweetness as they ate. It was a simple life. It was probably because no one knew them here. Hence, there wasn't a need to disguise. It was the most natural state. Chin Mo leaned against the wall with his upper body bare. He stood casually, but because of his long legs, he looked extremely handsome. Coupled with his noble aura, it was a pleasure to look at him. Just looking at it was a pleasure. He tore open the bread, dipped it in jam, and fed it to a certain someone. A certain someone found it delicious. That was when he tried it. Bojo didn't seem to realize that she had become the Almighty's lab rat. She ate the bread in big mouthfuls, her cheeks puffed up. Eating was the happiest thing in the world. Chin Mo realized that no matter what this fellow fed her, she would find it delicious. Even Chin Mo didn't notice the smile on his face. Chin Mo, who had an average appetite, ate quite a bit. He found one of the benefits of this toy: it was easy to eat. With this eating method, the two of them finished their breakfast in 2 to 3 bites. After she finished the milk, she casually picked up the hairdryer and reached out to press down on the Almighty, who was about to stand up. Chin Mo arched a brow. Before he could say anything, he felt the hot air above his head. In addition, the youngster's fingers were fiddling with his hair. He didn't need to think to know what she was doing. He leaned against the wall, his line of sight able to see the loose sweater she was wearing. The fresh scent of a shower was even more obvious with the blowing of the hairdryer. He wasn't sure if it was because the sunlight was too good or because the strength was too moderate. When she moved her wrist, Chin Mo didn't push her away. A glint flashed past his eyes. Bojo wore a mischievous expression. It wasn't easy to see the Almighty being so obedient. Chin Mo wasn't suited for someone to rub his hair. He frowned, tilting his handsome face away. "Don't hide." Bojo pressed it back down and smiled. "You used to love me drying your hair. You would run over every time you washed your hair." Hearing this, Chin Mo's eyes darkened. He wasn't happy, but he didn't show any signs of anger. However, he didn't like to hear her talk about the past. That would make him feel like he had no sense of existence now. Next, Chin Mo moved. He reached out and pulled her hand over, planting a kiss on her fingertips. Just like that, they seemed to be touching. His entire body was bewitching. "My sugar daddy is really capable." With that, Chin Mo stood up, grabbed the blowtorch, and threw it into the bathroom. He didn't seem to care if it was damaged. "It's getting late, let's not waste time on such trivial matters. I'm curious about what kind of person I was in the past. If I go to a place I'm familiar with, I should be able to regain some of my memories. I'm very interested in the Jiang city you mentioned." Bojo noticed the coldness in his eyes, but he didn't seem to be fazed by it. To be exact, he was very interested in how they used to interact in the past. Chin Mo's eyes turned red, carrying a hint of danger. Chapter 1271. Bojo noticed the change in the Almighty's attitude. From his resistance to the mention of it, there had never been any warmth in his gaze. But she didn't expose him. As long as the Almighty wanted to return to Jiang City, it didn't matter what his real motive was. There were less than 3 days left until the Asian Cup. She had checked the rules of the competition and the opponents she would encounter. Supreme Alliance needed the Almighty. It hadn't been easy for them to reach this stage. If they missed the championship again because they didn't leave on time, everyone would regret it for the rest of their lives. Compared to the new teams, Supreme Alliance wasn't young anymore. In the esports arena, there was never a lack of talented and young players. Most people wouldn't just say they liked a team, but they didn't really like one team. Great waves washing sand was the basic principle of this industry. Bo Jiu wasn't the only one who understood this. Yun Hu, Lin Feng, Rao Rong, these players who had been playing for a few years all understood. Especially Yin Wuyao. Even though he said that his age wasn't stable. But deep down, he knew that this wasn't his peak. After this battle, whether or not they could wait another year and continue on this path was unknown to everyone. They couldn't compare to the new teams. Those youngsters were still young and had unlimited possibilities. Hence, Bo Jiu tried her best to bring the Almighty back to Jiang City. She knew that was what he wanted. Even if he had forgotten about it. Actually, it didn't matter. She was helping him remember it. Compared to the ungoverned area, the bustling Jiang City had already started to advertise for the upcoming Asian Cup. Regardless of whether it was online or offline, anyone who played games knew that this year's Asian Cup would be held in Jiang City. The lights in the Qin Group's club were lit throughout the night. Yao Yao seemed to be living in the internet cafe. There was basically someone delivering food in the internet cafe. A set meal of rice with meat and vegetables for 10 yuan. There were many varieties such as shredded pork with chili sauce, shredded pork with garlic sauce, and stir-fry. At noon, there weren't many people. In the evening, almost all the people who came to stay overnight would order a serving at around 12 o'clock. In the past, Shui Yao Yao had never eaten dinner because she was on a diet. Now, to familiarize herself with the battlefield, she would play games twice as often as before. When they were hungry, they would ask the people in the internet cafe for a portion. Now, Shui Yao Yao had gained some fame. She also had fans on the internet. Yin Wuyao had specially prepared a hat for her. Feng Shang was sitting next to her, wearing the same baseball cap. Coco also wanted to come over for a free meal. Facing the mirror, he began to arm himself. After she was armed, she crept downstairs and silently walked past a dozen female fans waiting downstairs. She smiled so much that her eyes were curved. She took out her phone and sent a voice message to Yin Wuyao. "Uncle, I'm telling you, I was very successful this time. No one recognized me. Wait for me, I'll be there in a while." Yin Wuyao had a cigarette in his mouth. After listening to the voice message, he lifted his head slightly and didn't reply. No matter how Coco armed himself, he would be recognized. Unfortunately, Coco wasn't aware of this problem. He was very excited and looked like a cat-like teenager. Even his eyes were covered, but he had a pair of furry ears on his head. After all, Christmas was coming. As a typical otaku, Coco was very curious about everything. He had used 20 minutes to shake off his assistant. He had even used the excuse of a cold to trick him into buying medicine for him so that he could go to the internet cafe at night. Coco rarely went out alone. He was a young master from abroad and he was an esports celebrity that Supreme Alliance had specially groomed. Hence, his trips were destined to be different from others. Every time he went out, he would be followed by a nanny car. This wasn't an exaggeration. His fans were young but they were very loyal. They would often wait downstairs and sometimes at the airport, although it wasn't on a large scale. But it was undeniable that it wasn't easy for Coco to go out. This time, Coco thought that he had finally shaken off his assistant and wanted to try taking the subway alone. He didn't know that his sneaky behavior had been captured by the people behind him. There were 3 girls covering their mouths and whispering, "Coco is so cute." He thought we couldn't tell who he was. He's so cute. Since someone had taken a photo, someone would definitely post it online. When Coco bought the subway card with his mask on, his eyes were very serious as he asked the ticket seller, "Do you know me?" Then, he successfully got a subtle look from the ticket seller, asking him if he had some kind of mental illness. Coco wasn't angry. Instead, he was very satisfied. Look, everything was fine. He could go out by himself. However, the next second, his phone rang. His phone rang. It was Feng Yi. Coco was shocked. He looked around before picking up the call, pretending to be calm. Hello, what's up? I'm playing games to train my hand speed. If there's nothing important, I'll hang up first. Playing games? Training your hand speed? Feng Yi laughed. Why don't you explain to me how you train your hand speed by playing games in the subway? Coco froze. He told himself that Fox Feng couldn't possibly know where he was. He must be trying to bomb him. Cough, what are you saying? I can't hear you. The game is dying. Feng Yi heard this and placed his pen down slowly. He looked at the tablet that the assistant brought over. The photo on it was very eye-catching. The cat ears on your head look good. F***ck. Coco took off his mask and was a little annoyed. How did you know? Feng Yi gestured to the assistant before saying, it's all thanks to your huge number of fans. There should be a few behind you now and there will be more in the future. It's best that you leave before anyone can react. As for the place you want to go to, do you want to cause the internet cafe to close down? Stay where you are and don't move. The assistant will be there in a minute. Coco actually didn't understand. Fox Feng, be honest, are you hiding something from us? Otherwise, even in the past, he would occasionally come out for a breather. It wouldn't affect the overall situation. Feng Yi paused. No. Coco wore his mask. Who are you lying to? It's not like I don't go online. Those people are still scolding Little Spade, that's why you're worried about others. Feng Yi laughed. Since you're clear, come back obediently. Got it. Coco tilted his head, his eyes dimming. But, is it always going to be like this? Sometimes, he didn't understand the speculations the netizens had towards that person. Just because that person was a girl, all her previous efforts were denied. If it hadn't been for Big Spade, they wouldn't have been able to qualify and would have lost in the provincial team competition. How could they have a future? Big Spade had never done anything overboard. If she had really found a substitute player or done something immoral, he wouldn't forgive her. Because it was related to professionalism. But so what? Coco still believed that fans shouldn't be like this. But he knew that some people had used their love as an excuse to force Feng Yi to spare some time to manage. Some people's love was scarier than disgust. They used that word to blackmail you into thanking her. If you didn't thank them, they would think you didn't cherish your true fans. The comments online didn't die down. Sometimes, Coco's heart would turn cold. He had asked himself why he still wanted to play sports. There were thousands of reasons to tell him to give up. But there was one reason he couldn't let it go. His teammates were here. There were so many people holding up signs, supporting him. This was probably the question that every Supreme Alliance member would be thinking about in the middle of the night. But they didn't know. The matter online was one thing. What truly made Feng Yi feel helpless was that he had used his family's connections to obtain accurate information from the compound. Qin Mo was missing. And the higher-ups were trying to find him. There wasn't any specific content and the person who said it wasn't clear. Because anything related to Qin Mo was too confidential. Feng Yi put down the phone in his hand. How was he going to tell the players who were still waiting for Qin Mo's return that their captain wouldn't be coming back, Boss Feng? The assistant watched the vice president's expression worriedly. She had been in the club for so long but had never seen Feng Yi like this. Regardless of the time, he would never let people think Supreme Alliance was in danger. Even after the competition ended, he still had a fox-like smile on his face, moving freely in and out of the mall. But this time, he took off his glasses, probably because he was too tired, even his voice was a little hoarse. Go and write the press release. Are we really going to do that? The assistant couldn't help but ask. Is there a possibility of a turnaround? Feng Yi glanced over, rubbing his brows, not saying a word. The assistant continued, actually, Boss Feng, I used to resent Big Spade too. After all, I couldn't understand why she wasn't afraid of anything, not even her fans. What right did she have to be like that? Later on, I understood that she didn't do anything wrong. Esports is just esports. If it wasn't for her, Supreme Alliance would forever be stuck in the provincial competition. It's us outsiders who think too much. If we like an idol, we should let that idol do as we want. This is a problem in itself. Feng Yi tilted his head, lighting a cigarette. It's too late. After going through that kind of thing, no one would come back. Many people said that the fans would be bitterly disappointed. Perhaps they didn't know. As an idol, they would be bitterly disappointed. But at this moment, a video suddenly appeared on Weibo. The media was shocked at the number of reposts. How could it be so high? It was about to become a hot topic. Feng Yi was still thinking about how to get Coco out of the whirlpool of public opinion without being used by others. He didn't notice the commotion on the internet. It was someone from the publicity department. He pushed open the meeting room door, panting heavily as he looked at Feng Yi. Boss Feng, Weibo, Weibo. Feng Yi's face changed, thinking that something had happened on Weibo. Everyone knew that Supreme Alliance was on the verge of collapse. Ever since the news of Spade Z being a girl was exposed, the internet hadn't calmed down. If it happened again. Even Feng Yi wasn't sure if they would lose the Asian Cup before the competition even started. Boss Feng, here. The person in charge of the operations took a laptop, clicking on one of the Weibo posts. The post was written like this. Do you still remember the brothers who used to play together in the dormitory? Do you still remember the crystal that you pushed away together? Do you still remember the days when you turned around and clapped with that person, shouting, double kill, instant noodles flying everywhere? Do you still remember the team that you loved the most, Supreme Alliance? After the two words Supreme Alliance landed. It was a video. The video was like a micro-movie, but it was as though it was happening right beside them. The first scene of the video was of a teacher, teaching ABCD on the stage. The second scene was of a computer programmer. The camera slid over to the hero icon on his computer screen. He was working overtime late at night, staring at the icon for a long time without opening it. The third scene was of a driver, his body leaning back, waiting for the traffic light. He heard a middle school student beside him talking, "Did you know that this year's Asian Cup will be held in Jiang City? Supreme Alliance will be competing." The driver's fingers paused, only starting the car after 3 seconds. The fourth scene was of a person working on a video, but he couldn't do it well. He was obviously being scolded, turning his head to smoke. "Brotherly, buy me a bottle of water." Someone ordered him. He didn't move. The person saw him looking at his computer, arching a brow. "Brotherly, do you know how to play games?" "Nope." However, the next moment, he lifted his head to see a video. Almost at the same time, the other three were watching the video from different places. It was a video of Supreme Alliance competing in the National League. 11 of them, lined up, their uniforms fluttering in the wind. When you dream in the middle of the night, do you still remember the path you took when you were young, the people you loved, the games you played? In 2018, we will wait for you here, Supreme Alliance. In that instant, the gazes of the four of them changed. The scene returned to a year ago, when they were sitting in the dormitory, each of them wearing headphones, throwing peanuts at each other. Buses, high-speed trains, taxis. The background music started. It was the song Spade Z had hummed during the filming of the variety show. "You and I come from small villages in Hubei, Sichuan, Guangxi, Ningxia, Hunan, Shandong, Guizhou, and Yunnan. We once swore to be great people, but one day in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, we suddenly woke up in the middle of the night, as though we were woken up by fate. It said that we can't live like this. It said that we can't live like this for the rest of our lives." Swoosh. The scene changed. The four of them gathered in Jiang City. After hugging, they sat in the internet cafe, just like in school. They wore their headphones and the special effects of burning blood started playing. "We're here, the real Supreme Alliance, where are you?" "The real Supreme Alliance?" Feng Yi paused. Even the people from the publicity department had tears in their eyes as they watched from behind. Without Spade Z, how could the Supreme Alliance be considered the real Supreme Alliance? What shocked them was that the video wasn't over. It was followed by a 5-second interview. "I'm from Jiangxi, Big Spade, where are you?" "Reporting from Shandong, I'm here to watch the competition." "It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, Supreme Alliance is complete with Almighty Z. I'm in Hangzhou. The first time I heard about Spade Z, I found her extremely handsome. The FC King of Zone C, she doesn't say a word when she's playing, she's so cool. As long as we follow behind her, we can win. Is it time?" "It's a pity, Almighty Z, I miss you so much. Almighty Z, I miss you so much." It was just a few words, but they came from all over the world. Yes, it wasn't just China. There were people of other colors too. Every time a city's name flashed across the video, it was a shocking sight. In the end, there was only one sentence. "Supreme Alliance, we'll be waiting for your return." The operations manager was a lady after all, she couldn't help but cry. Feng Yi stood there, dressed in a well-ironed suit. When he turned back, he saw the names of the team members. One after another, the names were filled, leaving only the assassin's spot. Feng Yi inhaled deeply. Contact the committee and report Spade Z's name. But what if she can't make it back in time? The operations manager sniffled. Feng Yi didn't shift his gaze. She has to appear on the list at the very least. All right. The operations manager knew how much pressure the team would face if she reported her name. The netizens wouldn't let up on Spade Z's cross-dressing scandal. If they lost, Supreme Alliance would be doomed. But what could they do? Who hadn't been young and capricious before? The phone in the club was about to explode with calls. Many people suspected that it was Feng Yi's method since he was good at creating hype. But later on, people realized it wasn't anyone's doing. Those reposts, those comments, those voices on the official platform. If you had the heart, please take a look. What kind of expectations did a true fan have? If you really liked him, don't do anything he didn't like. If you really liked someone, stay closer to his competition and away from his private life. If you really liked this team, you just hoped to take one more look at them, to be able to stay together, even if it was just one more competition. They knew that in less than a year, these people would gradually retire. Perhaps many years later, they would become people they didn't even know. For work, for business, for socializing, they were always in a hurry. But even if one day, they could still remember their current feelings, that would be enough. Many people had forgotten something. Esports wasn't the entertainment industry. They might have looked at the face and appearance. But there was a group of people who truly loved it, that was how cohesive they were. In the end, the producer of the video was found out. He was a fan. That's right, a fan. It was a real person, one of the 4 people in the video. The twisted girls on the internet would probably never understand how much courage Supreme Alliance could bring to some people. And this courage was best described from a man's perspective. Chapter 1272. Have you ever felt that way? His throat tightened, not because he was upset but because he was touched. Whether it was an ordinary person or a member of the esports arena, they all had the same reaction when they saw the video. Lin Feng wore a sweater, standing in front of a store, watching the video on the screen, a cup of coffee in his hand. If little Spade knew there were so many people waiting for her, I wonder if she would come back. Yun, who stood behind him, both hands in the pockets of his trench coat, glancing over. Lin Feng frowned, muttering, I wonder where that fellow went, I can't contact him at all. Compared to Lin Feng, Yun, who had always thought deeper. In his heart, the youngster wasn't simple. Since he couldn't contact him, there must be something else. It's 5, if we don't leave now, there will be many people in the supermarket. That was right. The two of them came out to shop. Lin Feng didn't know who was his mother's biological son. Ever since Yunhu came back, he had been fed with all sorts of soup and water. She had even said that they were going to compete and that he had to nourish himself. It had been 3 consecutive days. Every day, she would send Lin Feng out to buy bones to make soup. As an esports almighty, he had become a professional at fighting for bones with the aunties in the supermarket. Today, his mother wasn't too much, saying that Yunhu would drive over and they could buy a new pot together. At the start, Lin Feng had been rather happy, but after coming out, it wasn't the same. He felt that it was a little awkward for the two of them to shop together. Moreover, they bought fruits and vegetables, an area that men rarely came to. Yunhu was calm, pushing a shopping cart, his long legs walking in front. He wore a beige double-breasted trench coat, making him look gentler than usual. Lin Feng was afraid someone would recognize them and take photos of them together, hence, he wore a pure black mask. The mask was huge, but it didn't have the effect of keeping a low profile. Both of their figures and aura were there, even without their faces, they looked like they were in middle school. Walking in the fruits and vegetables area was indeed a little eye-catching. How could someone so handsome come to such an area? There were already a few girls who couldn't help looking over. Lin Feng still had the burden of being an idol, he rushed Yunhu as he walked. Hurry up. All right. Yunhu agreed, but his movements were still slow. He walked to Lin Feng's side and turned his body slightly. Do you want potatoes? Lin Feng nodded his head, his eyes darting back and forth. Who cares what it is? Leaving as soon as possible after buying it is the right thing to do. Yunhu glanced at him before glancing at the girls not far away. He turned his head and casually placed the packaged potatoes on Lin Feng's face. Weigh them. Ah. Oh, weigh me, weigh me. Lin Feng had never felt so guilty before. The topic of two people shopping in the supermarket was really sensitive. Yunhu watched his actions, his gaze deepening. When he returned, he lowered his head and asked, Do you want some oranges? Lin Feng also realized that this kind of whispering was too intimate. His face was a little uncomfortable from the other person's breath. He moved his body to the left and said, You can buy whatever you want. Then take a few. Yunhu acted as though he didn't see him dodge, remaining calm. Even Lin Feng found it strange. After all, in his impression, Yunhu didn't seem like someone who would shop in a supermarket. Chapter 1273. Yunhu was indeed different now. If it was in the past, he would still be worried about whether he should turn Lin Feng gay. Ever since he had left and this guy had cried, he didn't have to worry anymore. Instead of thinking about whether to turn him gay, it was better to think about how to turn him gay. Yunhu glanced sideways, glancing at the masked man beside him. Since they had already come this far, he couldn't retreat to the position of a good brother. He might as well take the initiative. Lin Feng didn't know what Yunhu was thinking. He glanced at the things in the cart. We're almost done. Shall we go? Let's go to the snacks area. Yunhu was pushing the shopping cart. Their movements were completely under his control. Lin Feng glanced at the girls again. Didn't you never eat snacks? My taste has changed recently, Yunhu replied casually. This is your favorite brand of chips, right? What flavor is good? When Lin Feng turned his head again, he saw Yunhu holding the snacks he usually ate. Barbecue flavor. Since he had already taken it, he might as well take a few more bags. Lin Feng thought about it and reached out his hand. Just then, he heard the sound of a phone photo. It was the two girls from before. Lin Feng's movements froze mainly because of his posture. Yunhu stood motionless in front of the snacks rack. Lin Feng reached out his hand to support his back. He looked as though he was about to push him against the wall. This was a huge misunderstanding. Lin Feng turned, wanting to chase after them and get the girl to delete the photo. Yunhu grabbed his wrist, his voice calm. You want everyone here to know that you are Lin Feng. They probably just took a photo casually. They don't know who you and I are. When Lin Feng heard this, he glanced over again. The two girls didn't ask for their autographs and didn't continue taking photos. They seemed to have taken the photo because they saw the two of them shopping in the supermarket. The girls also realized that their actions just now were probably not very polite. When they saw the handsome man wearing a mask looking at them, they were startled. They decided to walk over and admit their mistake. I'm sorry, I took a photo because you are so lovey-dovey. The girl took out her phone. I'll delete it now. Lin Feng was speechless. Too loving, too loving. Yunhu pushed the cart with one hand and held on to a certain someone with the other. His thin lips curved upwards. It's okay. As expected, I didn't guess wrong. It's rare to see two boys shopping and cooking together in the supermarket. As expected, only a couple would do that. The girl smiled happily. Lin Feng. He actually couldn't refute that. Yunhu didn't know what else he said. The two girls glanced at Lin Feng. Seeing that he was wearing a mask, they had no intention of saying anything. They giggled and said, how awkward. Lin Feng wanted to take off his mask again. Him. Yunhu seemed to have seen through his thoughts and lowered his voice. Be careful of fans. Lin Feng's throat kept repeating the word F***ck until the man left. Actually, he knew that he couldn't blame the two girls. The Empress Dowager was the real culprit. Why didn't she consider that two boys would be awkward when shopping in the supermarket? And why do you buy so many things? Yunhu didn't have any intention of leaving. Chapter 1274. How about trying this noodles? Yunhu asked casually. Lin Feng was confused. This person pulled down his mask just to let him try the noodles in the supermarket. What if someone saw through him? Moreover, the supermarket staff standing at the side had a suggestive smile on their faces. That was true. They probably hadn't seen two men being so intimate before. Lin Feng swallowed the noodles hurriedly, replying casually, it's delicious. Buy a few bags then. It can be a midnight snack at the club. Yunhu's actions were natural. There was nothing wrong with it. Lin Feng's face was still hot. The warmth made him want to leave quickly. Let's go once you're done. If they stayed any longer, they would probably become a couple in the eyes of others. Who had a boyfriend? Even though his phone hadn't been ringing for the past 2 days. It was probably because the training mission was too heavy and he didn't have time to contact him. But if the two of them were really recognized and someone exaggerated something, maybe Hu Zi's boyfriend would misunderstand. Lin Feng thought about it and felt that it wasn't appropriate to stay any longer. But Yunhu didn't think so. It wasn't easy for them to be alone. Of course, the longer the better. But he also understood that he couldn't force him too close. You still haven't bought the ice cream. Didn't you say you wanted ice cream just now? Yunhu's words were reasonable. Lin Feng thought about it. It would be awkward if he overreacted. It wasn't a big deal to leave after taking the ice cream. But when he opened the freezer and picked an ice cream, the man bent down and picked an ice cream across him. Is this a new product from China? Lin Feng replied, his mind drifting. He tried his best to avoid contact. He was a man. Why was he so repressed recently? What flavors do you have? Yunhu asked. Lin Feng tried to make himself look more manly. Strawberry and peach. Oh, that should be good. Yunhu fiddled with it a few more times. He took the peach ice cream and placed it in the cart. When he lowered his gaze, he could see the pink on his fair neck. It was really attractive. Yunhu's hand paused subconsciously, his gaze deepening. On the other side, the naive Lin Feng felt that his brother was deliberately stalling for time. But after thinking about it carefully, there was no need to stall for time just to pick an ice cream. After denying his thoughts, he watched as Yun-Hoo went to the other fridge to get the yogurt. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. He leaned over and took all the ice cream he liked and placed them all in the cart. "Are you done?" Yun-Hoo walked back and glanced at Lin Feng. As expected, he couldn't be too strict with this guy. Lin Feng nodded. "I'll queue up." "All right." Finally, he could leave. In the future, he would come to the supermarket by himself. Lin Feng thought about it and decided to find a place near the cashier to wait for Yun-Hoo to settle the bill. Unfortunately, he was standing in the most awkward position. People who frequented supermarkets all knew the layout of supermarkets. Condoms were usually placed near the cashier, and they were arranged very beautifully. They were packaged in various colors, and they even looked like candies and chocolates. Chapter 1275. Lin Feng had originally planned to leave calmly. After all, there was nothing wrong with a condom if you ignored it. You could just brush past it like chewing gum. Who knew that he hadn't retracted his gaze? There was an additional arm on his shoulder. It was Yun-Hoo who had wanted to pay the bill. It was normal for boys to hook their shoulders. "I didn't bring my wallet." That was Yun-Hoo's first sentence. His second sentence was accompanied by his gaze. Lin Feng knew that he was going to embarrass himself this time. "So you were looking at this?" Lin Feng wanted to say that it was a coincidence. But before he could speak, Yun-Hoo's voice came from beside his ear. Yun-Hoo's voice entered his ears again, his breath just enough to sweep past his ears. "Have you decided which brand to buy?" What brand?" He didn't have any experience. How would he know about brands? Yun-Hoo arched a brow. "Condom brand, which one do you like?" Lin Feng coughed. He couldn't let Yun-Hoo think that he was a newbie. This was the biggest taboo for a man. He had to maintain his image. He said nonchalantly, "The brand doesn't matter. The main point is the quality. After all, I have a long time." When he said this, Yun-Hoo glanced in his direction, his gaze deep. Lin Feng was a little annoyed. "What's with that look?" "Nothing." Yun-Hoo smiled, glancing sideways. "This is the first time I know that you have a long time." Lin Feng looked at the face that was inches away from him. His face flushed when he said, "Go to hell." This was the disadvantage of being a good brother. He knew everything. By this, Yun-Hoo pulled the topic back naturally. "If the brand is good, there are many flavors to choose from. Don't you like strawberry? I have it here." As Yun-Hoo spoke, his hand reached out. His fingertips touched the exquisite packaging. He casually threw 3 bags into the car. "Wait a minute, when did he say that he wanted to buy this thing? And why did he take so many?" Lin Feng's eyes widened. But Yun-Hoo's tone was very deliberative. He couldn't say anything. After all, he was the one who stood here first. However, Lin Feng felt that something was strange. When he raised his head, he saw a few girls sneaking glances in their direction. They covered their mouths with a suggestive look on their faces. There was obvious excitement on their faces, and he could vaguely hear them saying, "Not only are you buying groceries together, but you're also buying condoms together. Are you guys living together? Did you guys hear that?" The attacker said that the submissive liked strawberry flavor. Strawberry. What at Sundara? Lin Feng, he finally knew what was wrong. Why did he have to stand here with Hu Zi for such a long time, even discussing the taste of this thing? Not to mention these girls, even if he saw 2 men buying condoms together, he would also think in that direction. He really couldn't explain himself even if he jumped into the Yellow River. But since he had already taken it, he couldn't just put it back. Forget it, quickly pay the bill. Pay the bill and leave quickly. Fortunately, both of them were wearing masks. Otherwise, if it was posted on the internet, it might attract a storm of blood. After knowing that Yun-Hoo didn't bring his wallet, Lin Feng went to queue up. When he was paying the bill, he watched as the cashier swept a glance at the item. Lin Feng's gaze was clearly wavering. Chapter 1276. No matter how he looked at it, he didn't seem like he had any experience. Yunhu could still remember how he felt when this person went on a date with the girl who had given him the love letter and didn't return until the next day. At that time, he didn't have a driver's license and couldn't drive the family car. He had asked the driver to bring him everywhere to look for this person. In the end, he hadn't found him. That day had become the day he regretted the most. No one could understand how his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. At that time, he hadn't understood why he had been so flustered and uncomfortable. He had kept his eyes open until the next day. He picked up his bag and went to school. When he saw that person chatting happily in class, someone asked him what he had done with the class bell next door. He grabbed a book and threw it over, scolding jokingly, "Don't ask, I have a temper too." Only he could see that person's face was a little red when he said this. That day, he hadn't spoken to him. He had been afraid that he would explode the moment he spoke. Yet, he had said in front of him that girls were different from boys. They were like cotton, very soft. That was one of the few times he had a cold war with him. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear him describe that night. For a whole month, he hadn't spoken to him. At the same time, he understood what jealousy was. Because he was so jealous, he had subconsciously looked at that girl. Until that girl had asked if she wanted to do her homework at the coffee shop with a red face. Yunhu had agreed with a faint smile. Yes, he wanted to let him know that some people weren't worthy of his constant attention. Very quickly, he had been punched by him. It was so heavy that even now, when he thought about it, he still asked himself what exactly he had wanted to do. Perhaps he had been too jealous that that girl could have him for a night. But he hadn't gotten anything, even though they had been so close. Looking at it now, according to a certain someone's personality, perhaps nothing had happened that day. After all, as a certain someone had said, he had been through hundreds of battles. So how could he explain his current expression? Yunhu glanced at Lin Feng's face, watching as he uncomfortably placed the 3 bags into the plastic bag. He was only wearing a thick black sweater, but he was more handsome than everyone else. He even gave off a carefree vibe. But Yunhu knew this person's state better than anyone else. He had no experience. Yunhu's lips curved into a smile when he thought about it. Lin Feng was still grumbling that he would never come to the supermarket together again. He was really unlucky. Being naive, he didn't notice that his words had been seen through. The car was on the ground. It was dark black and not eye-catching at all. But those who were familiar with cars knew that ordinary families couldn't afford to use a Cayenne as a means of transportation. Lin Feng was already used to it. After all, he knew how the Yun family was like. Yunhu tilted his head and spoke on WeChat. The person who sent the message was none other than Mother Lin. Yeah, Lin Feng and I finished shopping and we're just about to head back. I think there will be a little traffic jam at this time. After reporting the progress, Yunhu placed his phone at the side. After glancing at Lin Feng, he suddenly leaned forward. Lin Feng was still holding something in his hands. What are you doing? Fasten your seatbelt. Yunhu's attitude was natural. Lin Feng was extremely uncomfortable. He was too close. I'll fasten it myself. Yunhu didn't force him. After retracting his hand, he asked casually, who are you going to use those things with? Don't you have a girlfriend yet? Lin Feng choked and laughed dryly. Who said I don't have one? Why? Are you pretending to have one? Yunhu turned the steering wheel with one hand and smiled. When we just left, you told Auntie Lin to prepare for the competition seriously and not consider personal matters. Did you forget it so quickly? When Lin Feng heard this, he knew he couldn't fool him anymore. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He was really rascally. Can't I keep it for storage? Of course. Yunhu took the opportunity to light a cigarette while waiting for the red light. His gaze deepened. It's convenient. Convenient? What was convenient? Lin Feng was puzzled by what he heard. He felt that Yunhu was hinting at something. There's no need for me to buy it. Yunhu blew out a smoke ring. He seemed to be very close to him. Lin Feng completely misunderstood Yunhu. He thought about his boyfriend. If you need it, you can take it away now. Yunhu glanced at him. Do you want to use it now? No. Lin Feng flicked the cigarette ash. He hadn't expected to encounter such a situation and ask him for such things. Yunhu replied slowly, then I don't need it now. Lin Feng didn't know what to say. If something really happened between him and his boyfriend one day, it was best not to let him know. He felt a tightness in his chest. It should be better to smoke. That was what Lin Feng thought. Yunhu also realized that this person probably didn't understand what he meant. But it didn't matter. When the competition ended, he would have a good talk with him. There was indeed a traffic jam. When they reached home, Lin Feng returned to his usual young master manner and placed the plastic bag on the sofa. I'm exhausted. I told Empress Dowager, can you go shopping yourself in the future? I can't. Mother Lin was beautiful. Have you seen any beauty go shopping in the market? I just did my nails, what if I spoil them again? Look at Lin Hu and look at you, both of you are going shopping. Lin Feng. Really, he definitely wasn't related. Let me see what you bought. Mother Lin said as she flipped through the bags. Lin Feng leaped up instantly and pulled the bags towards the river. Mother Lin was confused. Son. Cough. Lin Feng cleared his throat. Yunhu said that his throat is sore. Go make some pear soup for him first, we'll look at the vegetables later. If he flipped through the bags, he would be dead. You little rascal, you are quite caring. Mother Lin nodded and went to make the pear soup happily. Lin Feng felt that it was a false alarm. He hurriedly took out the 3 bags and stuffed them into his trouser pocket before heaving a sigh of relief. Yunhu, who was sitting beside him, looked at him with a smile as though it was nothing and as though he was making a fuss out of nothing. That was true. He was inexperienced. Yunhu had a boyfriend, so he couldn't compare. Lin Feng felt that the things in his trouser pocket were getting more and more uncomfortable. He decided to find a place to throw them away. The moment he entered his room, someone followed behind him. The door was pushed open and he didn't stop his actions. Everything had probably been seen, so there was nothing to hide. Lin Feng stuffed his hands into his trouser pocket and met Yunhu's eyes. They seemed a little indifferent and deep. A ray of light flashed past as though he was hurt by something. Chapter 1277. Ah. Lin Feng grabbed his hair. I didn't think I could use it and it would be awkward if my mom saw it. I might as well throw it away. Yunhu's gaze landed on his face. Didn't I ask you to keep it? Lin Feng couldn't control himself. Can't you buy it when you want to use it with your boyfriend? Why do you want me to keep it for you? Yunhu looked at him, his voice slow. What boyfriend? Are you trying to provoke me? Lin Feng reached out and pulled the man's collar up. What boyfriend are you talking about? Don't tell me you're learning from those people on the internet, fooling around with anyone you meet. Yunhu arched a brow. With a flip of his hand, he pressed Lin Feng against the wall, his hands still holding onto Lin Feng's wrist. If I was just fooling around, would I have waited for you for so long? Lin Feng's face turned red at this baffling question. You can talk, but can you not be so close to me? F***ck. Lin Feng really didn't know what to say. Yunhu inched closer to the person's face and smiled slowly. Are you shy? F***cku. Lin Feng inhaled deeply. Let go of me first. Yunhu bent over. I'm not letting go. F***ck. Lin Feng was going crazy. Yunhu felt that it wasn't bad, especially when he saw the flush on his face. His heart itched, as though there was a cat scratching his heart. Just as he was about to talk about his so-called boyfriend, Lin Feng seemed to have found his savior. Lin Feng looked as if he had finally found his savior and used his hand to push him away. Get away, there's a call. There was indeed a call. From his position, Yunhu could feel his phone vibrating in his pocket. He had no choice but to let go of him. Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. The call came at the right time. He reached out to take the phone. When he saw the caller ID, he was completely different. He immediately pressed the answer button. F***CK. Little Spade. You have to tell me clearly where exactly are you. I'm telling you, don't find an excuse to hang up on me. Senior Lin, you're still as energetic as ever. I didn't intend to hang up. I called to tell you that Brother Mo and I are flying to Jiang City tomorrow and we need someone to cover us. Qin Mo nodded. Senior Lin, you're still as energetic as ever. I didn't intend to hang up. The captain is with you? Lin Feng's voice was filled with surprise. In the end, she decided not to tell him about the Almighty's amnesia since there were still people investigating. We'll talk when we meet. I have a car here that needs to be taken over. You can be my guarantor and we'll talk about the rest when we meet. Car? Sure. This was the advantage of being naive and sweet. She wouldn't ask too many questions. After Bo Jio hung up, she lifted her head and met his gaze. That person had just finished washing up, and his whole body was still emitting a refreshing mint scent. He was leaning against the door frame and looking at her. He must have heard the contents of her phone call, because his peach blossom eyes were very deep. Bo Jio stood up and walked over. I just made a call to our mutual friend. Oh. Qin Mo chuckled, but no one could tell what he was thinking. Chapter 1278. Bo Jio wasn't wrong. Indeed, Qin Mo wasn't interested in anyone else other than his prey. Especially when he knew she still had friends. In his heart, his prey only had to look at him. How could there be a friend? Qin Mo smiled, but there wasn't a hint of warmth in his eyes. But at this moment, he wouldn't allow himself to show it. He hadn't forgotten his persona. He had to be gentle at all times. Shall we go downstairs? Qin Mo asked, reaching for his coat. Bo Jio watched his tall and slender back view, unable to read his thoughts. But she understood that people who had lost their memories tended to distance themselves from others. But the Almighty was different. He seemed to believe everything that she said. They didn't bring any luggage. In such a lawless area, identification wasn't required and they could check in immediately. Hence, it was easy to leave the hotel. After a night's sleep, the Almighty seemed to have recovered completely. It didn't look like he had had a fever the night before. Bo Jio was the same. It wasn't because of her healing abilities, but after thinking about it, the things the Almighty had done last night were enough to make a person sweat until their fever subsided. Boss, do you have petrol here? Bo Jio decided to stock up on petrol for little Blackie before leaving. Unexpectedly, the boss's expression changed when he saw them, turning into a servant that answered every question. Petrol? I have a freshly filled car here. If you need it, I'll get it right away. As the owner spoke, when he passed by the Almighty, he revealed a flattering smile. Bo Jio arched a brow. The boss hadn't been this way when they had checked in last night. Why was it so different this morning? Seeing the Almighty was like a mouse seeing a cat. No, it was even scarier than seeing a cat. Brother Mo, you came down yesterday. That was her first reaction. Qin Mo didn't deny it, a warm smile on his face. I informed the boss when I asked for the petrol. Bo Jio was suspicious. Just a greeting. It seems like Sugar Daddy doesn't trust me. Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, I thought you would believe anything I say. Aren't you my lover? Bojo couldn't stand the way the Almighty was talking to her. Even though his attitude was casual, she started to reflect on herself. Of course I trust you. Chin Mo lowered his gaze. Bojo couldn't help but lean over and kiss him. I'll believe everything you say. Chin Mo chuckled. Boss's tone wasn't good yesterday, so I taught him some manners. Good teaching. When the boss who brought the gas heard the young man's words, he just wanted to send these two living bodhisattvas away as soon as possible. Do you have any idea how lethal this one of yours is? You're treating him like a porcelain doll. The boss dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. After all, when the man glanced at him without any emotion, he could feel a chill all over his body. He didn't know if the youth was really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. Since she brought such a man with her. He knew this kind of person the best. He looked gentle, like the most loyal butler. In fact, if one wasn't careful and bit down on him, he would be like a demon deacon, sucking his blood dry with the most elegant dining posture. Chapter 1279. With that, the boss couldn't help but admire the youngster's calmness. After all, he had experienced how scary this man could be. But this man was impressive. He was able to turn into another person in front of the youngster. There wasn't the slightest bit of malevolence from last night. He was acting innocent. Chin Mo was satisfied with the effect of his gaze. In front of his prey, he didn't want anyone else to speak. He didn't want to tear off this layer of disguise because the youngster's reaction was interesting. As long as he showed the slightest sign of weakness, she would hold him in her palms and use kisses to coax him. It was a refreshing feeling for Chin Mo. Besides, his prey wasn't stupid. It wouldn't be interesting if she simply thought that he was good. From the youngster's reaction, it was obvious that he had already guessed what he had done. However, he had still praised him for teaching him well. Chin Mo couldn't help but smile. Even when they were in the car, Chin Mo was still smiling. The moment little Blackie turned on the AI system, the car shook from the force. What was wrong with the devil? Why was he smiling so sweetly? He seemed to have sensed the change in the Lamborghini. Chin Mo turned over. This car isn't bad. Other than the land and water forms, what else is there? There isn't any form, but it can be used as a network hub. Bojo was in a good mood. It was a satisfying thing to have the Almighty stay by her side obediently. Xiao He, on the other hand, didn't feel so good about it. It felt that there was something fishy about the devil praising it. As an intelligent car, the information it had gathered told it that a devil like this would never praise anyone unless there was some ulterior motive. But its master. Sigh. Little Blackie didn't want to say anything else. Ever since the devil had appeared, its position as the #1 car pet hadn't returned. Chin Mo did have a motive, but it wasn't a big one. To him, he was more interested in a prey that only had him in her eyes. Hence, he didn't say anything else. Bojo waited for a moment before turning the car. It was a beautiful maneuver, a smile on her face. Oh right, the password for this car is, Chin Mo, I like you. Chin Mo knew his name a long time ago. Now that he heard the youngster's words, his hand that was twirling the poker card paused. Sounds like Sugar Daddy's personality. I think so too. Bojo turned the steering wheel. If you like it, say it. Chin Mo didn't say anything, but his smile deepened. He looked like a devil as he narrowed his eyes. Chi, what an idiot. Tell him everything. Aren't you worried that he'll drive away? With that in mind, Chin Mo glanced sideways at the youngster's face. Light seeped in, forming a halo. His skin seemed to be transparent. White and clean, even the fine hair could be seen. He knew very well how this face felt to the touch. Not only her face, but also the curve of her waist when she turned sideways. It was hard not to like the warm jade in his hand. Chin Mo thought, as long as his prey can stay like this, with a pair of eyes only looking at him, he wouldn't lose interest in her in the short term. Chapter 1280. But it didn't matter. There was such an interesting prey around. He could put aside the matter of killing for now. He could wait until he couldn't take it anymore. But no matter what, he had to wash his hands clean. In front of his prey, harmlessness was the most important condition. Qin Mo tilted his head. With his trench coat on, he was extremely eye-catching. He was like a walking clothes rack. With that face, he probably wouldn't be able to enter without some changes. Fortunately, Bojio had prepared many identification cards. She found one that was about the Almighty's age and made some changes to his appearance to reduce the Almighty's presence. Bojio knew that the more confidential the mission, the more they wouldn't be investigated openly. As long as the information was completely clean and the identity matched, they could basically enter the country. That was why she had taken a detour and decided to fly back from Country T. Country T was a tourist city and had always been visa-free for Chinese. Bojio was smart. She didn't fly directly. Instead, when she reached MG Airport, she signed up for a tour group and returned to Jiang City as a member. It was originally a low-quality tour. The few girls that followed her didn't feel anything other than shopping. When they reached the airport, two different types of handsome guys appeared in front of them. They were all in a good mood. Look over there. Handsome men, since when did our team have these two weirdos? They must have just arrived, we might be able to sit together later. Bojio's arrival made the tour group livelier. Some of them looked over. The girls were still trying to guess the relationship between the two, wondering if they could each have one. The corners of Qin Mo's mouth lifted, but he didn't say anything. He wasn't interested in the others. He just stood beside Bojio, looking harmless on the surface. He had an attractive aura. Bojio wanted to send the car back. Hence, she didn't bother about them and went to the first floor to submit the documents. Grandfather Butler was usually in charge of the overseas car entry and exit. Many people thought that Grandfather Butler was just an ordinary family doctor. In reality, that wasn't the case. It was a family of hackers. The butler of the family wasn't simple either. The old butler had a lot of channels in his hands, and every single one of them was hard to measure in terms of value. Of course, at the end of the day, it was also because of the Z codename. No one dared to offend this young master of hackers. Those who could make things convenient would usually do so. After all, anyone in the underworld would need information one day. Qin Mo watched the whole process, his eyes unsettled. After all, to him, the more complicated the identity of the prey, the more useful it would be. Brother Mo, do you want some water? Bojio was thirsty after she was done with her business. Qin Mo watched as she licked her lips, his eyes deepening. I'm indeed a little thirsty. I'll go buy it. She reached into her pocket and walked towards the vending machine. Her movements were casual, probably because of her long legs, which made her look dashing. The girl who was also waiting for the plane overheard their conversation and wanted to strike up a conversation. Handsome, I have an unopened bottle of water here. If you're thirsty, you can drink it first. Qin Mo glanced sideways, glancing at the mineral water that the girl handed over. He was about to turn her into his believer. Chapter 1281. It was easy to hint at someone. As long as he knew what the other party was thinking, it would be easy. But Qin Mo didn't want to take the bottle of water. Compared to his prey, these people looked too dirty. Had his appetite been spoiled? Qin Mo arched a brow. Just as he was about to stop, someone appeared on his shoulder. The youngster's pleasant scent wafted over. There was a smile on her face as she whispered into his left ear, I'm sorry, my boyfriend isn't used to drinking other people's food. Qin Mo didn't need to turn to know who was speaking. Except for the prey he was interested in. His current sugar daddy was an exception. No one would say such a thing. Qin Mo tilted his head and saw a beautiful side profile. She pouted her lips in his direction. She seemed to be saying, you caused trouble. Was she jealous? Qin Mo was curious. He reached out and pinched her chin, planting a kiss on it. She had just drunk the water and her mouth was filled with sweetness. Did you secretly eat sweets? Qin Mo asked casually. He didn't seem to have any intention of pushing the youngster off him. Instead, he smiled devilishly. My sugar daddy is really mischievous. Bo Jiu was caught off guard by the kiss. Moreover, the two girls could hear the Almighty calling her, so she couldn't be bothered to move. She had to be direct when it came to declaring her ownership. The girl who was flirting with him was confident in her looks, which was why she acted so boldly. She hadn't expected it to be so awkward. When she had heard their conversation, she had thought they were really brothers. She hadn't thought of anything else. But now that she looked at them, they were here on vacation. If it wasn't that kind of relationship, what else could it be? The girl blushed as she took the bottle back. Bo Jiu smiled at her. In an instant, the girl blushed again. Compared to the unapproachable man, the youngster seemed more considerate. Qin Mo noticed the commotion. His gaze deepened. When he looked at the girl again, the color in his eyes had changed. It was as dark as the night, endless. The girl shuddered. She felt as though he was going to kill her. The corners of his mouth were clearly hooked into a smile. Why did he give off such a feeling? Qin Mo didn't look at anyone. Instead, he hugged the youngster and placed her between his legs. They were both waiting for a flight, but no one sat like that. She didn't sit directly in his arms. Instead, Qin Mo sat on the chair while Bo Jiu sat like a huge doll. She stacked on top of him and sat in the same position. However, she exerted force on the front half of the chair. It was also because the Almighty's legs were too long that most people would be able to sit like that. The people at the side widened their eyes. This was overseas and they were still so open. How could they be like this in China? Bo Jiu also felt that they were attracting too much attention. However, the Almighty didn't change his position at all. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her waist from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. He closed his eyes, his eyelashes long like fans. I'm tired. Those 3 words successfully stopped Bo Jiu from moving. She turned to caress the Almighty's head, his black hair slipping past her fingertips. He was just like a little princess when he was young. Bo Jiu smiled, her heart softening. She coaxed, we're going to board the plane soon. Bear with it a little longer, MH. All right. Qin Mo didn't loosen his grip. His handsome face was mostly buried in her shoulder, leaving only his side profile that made people want to turn back to look at him. It was indeed breathtaking. The girl at the side had never seen such a person before. When he looked at her, his malevolent aura would send chills down anyone's spine. But the next second, when he faced the youngster, his fake gentleness seemed to be able to melt everything. However, the youngster was coaxing the devilish man like a child. The girl felt her heart racing. She didn't dare to say anything else and pulled her friend away. The other onlookers, on the other hand, were all curious. After all, it was rare for a grown man to be coaxed. Qin Mo didn't care about this at all. As long as his prey was within his control, everything was fine. But he realized that he wasn't completely in control. He didn't know what it would be like when they arrived at a place she was familiar with. Including the phone call she had made previously. Their mutual friend? Qin Mo arched a brow, his gaze deep. Soon, the plane started to arrange for check-in. Since it was a tour group, not many people checked. There weren't any sudden incidents on the plane. But there was one point that no one noticed. There was a gaze hidden in the crowd, filled with darkness and indignation. It was Fan Jia. After she had escaped, she had thought of many ways to get a new identity. Finally, she had settled everything. When she went to look for him, there was no news at all. When she saw the video online, she suddenly remembered that he would definitely return to Jiang City. Because in his subconscious mind, he wanted to return to a place he was familiar with, to crush all those who deserved to die. This was the real Qin Mo. Fan Jia watched as they left, a smile forming on her face. Psychological hints wouldn't go wrong. Now that he was staying by the youngster's side, he probably didn't have any sincerity. The biggest possibility was that he treated him as prey. Her teacher had once said, as psychologists, they were the best at disguising, especially when they had ulterior motives. Now, she just needed to return to Jiang City, find a way to get in touch with Qin Mo and guide him a little. Then he would truly belong to her. Because memories would change along with psychology. Fan Jia didn't feel that there was anything wrong with taking over a position that didn't belong to her. She turned and hid herself again. Now, her image was everywhere. Fan Jia didn't dare to show her face, purposely making a scar on her face to buy a late-night flight. At this moment, the plane had been flying for more than 2 hours. Bo Jiao and Qin Mo sat side by side. They had booked the entire first-class cabin. Firstly, they didn't want anyone to spy on them. Secondly, before boarding the plane, Qin Mo had said that he was tired. As a domineering CEO, if he didn't show off his wealth now, when would he? Moreover, Bo Jiao's money was going to rot if she didn't spend it. She decisively became a tycoon. In the end, the person who had said that he was tired wasn't sleeping. His long legs were slightly crossed as he read a newspaper. His entire body was filled with an aura of abstinence. But at this moment, there was a hint of darkness mixed in. On the other hand, Bo Jiao tilted her head to the side, her hair falling down, revealing her true color. Silver gray. It seemed like his sugar daddy was hiding something from him. Qin Mo arched a brow, his right hand moving slightly, allowing her to lean against him. After all, he liked her body temperature, it was warm but not scalding. The stewardess, who was pushing the dining cart over, saw this scene as soon as she arrived. After lowering her voice, she asked gently, "Sir, what would you like to drink?" "It's fine, just a blanket, thank you." When Qin Mo said this, there wasn't any warmth in his eyes. It was probably because of the youngster's frown. "Okay," the stewardess replied. When she turned back, she saw him patting the person in his arms with one hand. His voice was low and slow, it was extremely melodious, as though it could easily hypnotize a craftsman. The stewardess listened in a daze, shaking her head. She had almost forgotten what she was going to do. Qin Mo looked at Bo Jiao, reaching out to pinch her face, lowering his body. "You better not look at anyone else, my sugar daddy's little prey." Bo Jiao didn't have a light sleep, probably because the clothes in her hands and the surging scent in her nose were too familiar, making her feel comfortable. Just as she was about to hit the ground, she woke up and saw his left hand playing with the poker cards. His other hand was placed on her head, stroking her hair. After seeing her open her eyes, he smiled and planted a kiss on her forehead, but vaguely, there was an indescribable danger. "This is Jiang City." Bo Jiao followed his gaze, taking his hand over and placing it in her own. She played with it for a while before saying, "This is Jiang City, don't you like it?" "I don't dislike it." Qin Mo felt the warmth in his fingers, the light in his eyes dissipating a little. "I just can't remember how I used to live here in the past." Bo Jiao laughed. "You are very famous here, many people like you, you have a group of brothers who are loyal to you, but you still like me the most." Qin Mo arched a brow. From a certain perspective, the prey he had his eyes on seemed to be very thick-skinned. "Oh. What else? What else?" Bo Jiao thought for a moment. "You have a crush on me but are too embarrassed to admit it, so you gave me a lot of books for me to comprehend on my own." "What are the books I gave you?" Qin Mo asked casually. Bo Jiao straightened her body suavely. "Overbearing CEO falls in love with me, Where Are My Sweetheart?" "There are also some books I can't remember." Qin Mo tapped the corner of her lips with his finger. "What?" Bo Jiao arched a brow. Qin Mo leaned over, kissing her lips lightly. His breath followed. "Water stain, you didn't drink obediently when I fed you water. But I'm curious, what did you comprehend from the books? Of course it's your first awakening of love. Bo-jio wrapped her arms around his neck. When she smiled, the mole at the corner of her eyes glistened. Chin Mo's lower abdomen tightened, his gaze deepening. His fingers slid into her sweater through the blanket. When he smiled, he didn't know why, but his body temperature rose as well. Bo-jio could feel his strength clearly. She suddenly trembled, tears welling up in her eyes. Chin Mo lowered his voice, low and sexy, right beside her ear. His breath hit her, making her arch her back. Chapter 1282. How to make your body feel happy. Bo-jio realized that her earlobe was being bitten lightly. That sexy voice and hot breath hit her ear, sending a numbing sensation through her. Bo-jio knew that the Almighty wouldn't do anything to her since they were about to alight. But the subtle teasing was unbearable, her eyes turning red. He seemed to like seeing her like this, chuckling softly beside her ear. It seems to be effective. He wanted to play with it in his palm. Just like a little toy. But for some reason, when he heard the breath in his arms going wild, he actually had a reaction. This made him release his hand. But she was smiling, the corners of her lips lifting as she kissed him, like a siren in the water. It is indeed effective. Chin Mo's gaze deepened. If the broadcast hadn't interrupted his thoughts at the right time, perhaps he would reveal all of his true nature. For instance, he might have abducted her. Such a beautiful prey should be held in his arms and raised in a pampered manner. As for other things, be it a kiss or something deeper than a kiss, he should be the one to teach her. Perhaps he could plan it well. After all, he liked the way she smiled at him, the way her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of moonlight. But similarly, he didn't like that kind of warmth. Because Chin Mo knew that this person was looking at the past him. With that thought, a thin layer of coldness swept over the surging emotions in his eyes. Chin Mo laughed lightly. It would be better if we weren't on the plane. With that, his gaze landed on her neck. Then he lowered his lids, planting a kiss on it, followed by a light bite. Bo-jio wasn't able to reach for the vibrating phone in her pocket. She was even kneading it into a puddle. Bo-jio suspected that the Almighty was doing it on purpose since every time she picked up the call, he seemed a little unhappy. Even though he was smiling, no matter how she looked at him, he looked like a rich young master. But his actions were in line with the gentleness he purposely created. Come to think of it, he had been like this when they were young. Every time she went to play with other children, he would always stand by the side and smile like a prince, but it was different when he was with her. His little face was cold as he washed her hands, and he would even bite her fingers without saying why. The Almighty's personality was just that weird. Bo-jio was used to it. She held onto his shoulders tightly. She couldn't tell if it was ticklish or painful. She frowned slightly, her voice trembling. Gentler. When Chin Mo heard that voice, his eyes moved slightly. His gaze deepened, and even the imprint in his eyes reddened. Let me answer the phone. Bo-jio's breathing was unstable, the strands of sweat sticking to her flushed cheeks. Even if I don't pick up the call, we have to alight. Chin Mo was done. He pushed her hair away from her face and smiled gently. Of course I have to get off the plane. What else does my sugar daddy think I'm going to do? Bo-jio remained silent, waiting for the heat to dissipate. But the feeling of touch in some places had not faded. Chapter 1283. Chin Mo's lips brushed past Bo-jio's ears. Even though he didn't kiss her, it was more intimate. He looked into her eyes, chuckling lightly, his voice mesmerizing and deep. Just a single sentence from him was enough to make one's body heat up. Fortunately, they knew how to restrain themselves. Bo-jio pushed him away, reaching for her phone. She could hear the stewardess's high heels. The next second, the curtains were pulled open. Distinguished guests, our plane has landed safely. Please take your belongings with you when you get off the plane. Have a pleasant journey next time. This was probably the benefit of spending a lot of money. Even on the plane, there was a private space. Bojo caressed her neck, smiling suavely. Thank you. The stewardess was dazzled by her smile, nodding. Bojo placed the phone by her ear, lowering her voice as she said, hello. She and the Almighty didn't have any luggage. Bojo took a step before realizing that the Almighty wasn't following her. She turned back and saw Chin Mo's gaze sweeping towards the stewardess. His lips moved slightly, but she didn't know what he was saying. The stewardess's pupils constricted. She seemed to have been hypnotized, her body arching. Bojo couldn't see this because of her position. The stewardess was standing with her back facing her. But even so, the Almighty's smile made her hand pause for a moment. She wasn't a naive girl, she knew what that smile meant. But what should she do? That was her Chin Mo. Regardless of what he turned into, he would always be her little princess. Bojo reached out, tugging his wrist over. She tilted her body slightly, blocking his gaze towards the stewardess. She smiled faintly. Brother Mo, I'll get jealous if you flirt with someone like that. Chin Mo hadn't expected her to turn back so suddenly. After his wrist was touched, he couldn't be bothered with the hypnosis he had completed. After all, he couldn't let his prey notice anything wrong with him. He shifted his gaze away casually and said faintly, I get jealous when you smile at someone like that. Bojo stilled as she was being countered. That was the time difference. The air stewardess seemed to have woken up. She saw the young man holding the man's wrist. At such a close distance, it looked intimate. Bojo coughed lightly, dragging the Almighty away since the stewardess was still in shock. However, it was just a guess. She also vaguely understood one thing. It would be difficult for the Almighty to stand in the esports arena again. Previously, she had been thinking of bringing the Almighty back as soon as possible. However, he had neglected one point. Right now, would he still coordinate with everyone in the team and fight a match? All of this was unknown. It was better to think of a way to stop him from thinking of manipulating others. Handsome, harmless, and able to lead people's thoughts unknowingly. Such a dangerous Almighty. He had to keep it by his side. Bojo glanced over. Brother Mo, it seems like I have to watch you 24/7. Just like you used to look at me looking at you. At that time, she had always thought that he did not believe her. When the two of them exchanged places, Bojo finally understood. He looked at her as if he didn't want anything bad to happen to her. Right now, she was feeling the same way. She was afraid that one day, he would regain his memory and regret what he had done. Chapter 1284. Watch me 24 hours a day. Are you sure? Chin Mo didn't understand Bojo's thoughts, but he chuckled. It was light, but his gaze was as deep as the stars. I will torment you at night, but that's good too. You can put some of the things you learned into practice. When he said this, his breath was right behind her ear. It was slightly hot and slow, as though it was intentional. Bojo's uneasiness dissipated. She held onto his hand and continued walking. No matter what, it was good that he was here. Moreover, he allowed her to hold onto his hand so obediently. From a certain perspective, she felt that she was taking advantage of him. After all, he had allowed her to hold onto his hand when they were young. In the past, he would only tilt his head and glance at her. Now, it was good. She held onto his hand and he would follow her. Regardless of the reason, the blissful feeling was still the same. Indeed, Chin Mo wouldn't struggle free. He probably found it strange too. Or perhaps, he was indulging his beloved prey. Hence, he allowed himself to temporarily become an obedient pet boy. After all, he claimed to be a sugar daddy. A hint of playfulness flashed past Chin Mo's eyes. He had never seen such a pure sugar daddy. It tasted sweet in his mouth. He was indeed interested in those books. Today, he could study them properly. Bojo didn't know what he was thinking, but she knew that even if he changed his appearance, the Almighty's aura wouldn't change. She took out 2 black masks. After walking out of the tunnel, she gestured for him to lower his head. Qin Mo glanced at the things in her hands. He arched a brow. It seems like I can't be seen in Jiang City. It's not that you can't be seen. You are too popular and have too many fans. Bojo seemed to understand the Almighty's temper. She added, I don't want others to see you since you are mine. It was obvious that this sentence had an effect. She could see the faint smile on his lips under the bright light. Qin Mo didn't move. Instead, he lowered his body. His intention was clear. Bojo didn't need to lift her feet. She just needed to move her fingers, grazing his ear. The black mask unfurled, covering his handsome mixed-race face. How is it? Qin Mo asked casually. Bojo wore her mask as well. Through the black cloth, she smiled. Very handsome. She was even more arrogant than before. He had to be praised. So what if such a great god was dangerous? In fact, to a certain extent. In this way, he had just released everything, including some of his childhood habits. Bojo knew how dangerous the Almighty was when he wasn't even able to suppress his malevolence. He wouldn't be a rat like Fan Jia who only knew how to play tricks in the corner, nor would he be a criminal who created grievances like Kawang. He would do whatever he wanted, unrestrained by worldly rules. If he wanted to make a move, he would make a move, just like on the plane. He was more cunning than any psychopath. Like a demon, he could kill gracefully. This was the reason why people were afraid that his personality would change drastically after being hypnotized. Bojo understood everything. That was why she had to hold on to him and not let go. Not for the sake of protecting anyone. She was clear that she was the only one by his side. It was probably because this person was too strong. He was so strong that the first thing everyone thought about after he lost his memory was how dangerous he was. But no one had thought about his uneasiness and guesses. Who was he? Why did he appear in this place? Who should he trust? What was he thinking when he was facing so many speedboats and guns? The moment she thought about it, her heart softened. When she turned back, she saw his arrogant and aloof expression. It was clear that he was a little childish. How could he be so adorable? I want to make you small again. MMH? Qin Mo thought he had heard wrongly, but after leaning forward, he confirmed that she had indeed made a sound, even though it was soft. Bojo continued, then I can hug you in my arms and not let anyone bully you. Bully him? Qin Mo arched a brow. The youngster's stern and serious expression entered his eyes. It was that gaze that stopped him from executing his plan. In this world, who could bully him? He was really an idiot. But why didn't he want to leave? The only explanation Qin Mo could find was that his interest in her hadn't diminished. That was all. The two of them walked out of the terminal. They didn't have to wait for any luggage, so they were faster than the others. But the way they held hands without any taboo caused many people to turn back. The two of them were good-looking to begin with. Wearing masks to share the burden did not detract from this aspect. Instead, it added a sense of fashion. A girl exclaimed, "This is the most compatible couple I've ever seen." The airport is indeed the airport. I can see two handsome guys at once and they are a couple. Qin Mo lifted the corner of his lips as he listened to the conversation. A couple? It sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Of course, he wouldn't waste his time on such things. Because he still had to face the mutual friend that she had mentioned. Outside the airport, a long Rolls-Royce was parked in the middle of a row of cars. It was a low-profile black, but even so, it was enough to make a group of people stop. After all, there weren't many such cars in the country. Which family's young master was back? Everyone was guessing if he was a rich and powerful person in Jiang City. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't remember who was driving this car. Moreover, the person standing in front of the car was unfamiliar. He looked to be in his 60s, a Chinese-British old man with a tall and slender figure. There weren't many people who could wear such a classic suit, but this person did it. He held a pocket watch in his hand and glanced at it from time to time. He looked like a noble deacon that only appeared in comics, his entire body exuding wisdom. Was there a big production team filming a movie here? Or was it because Christmas was coming and they were filming a promotional video? After all, it wasn't realistic. But the next second, the old man smiled. He looked at the international exit kindly, his gaze landing on one spot. Then he opened the back door in a gentlemanly manner and gestured for them to enter. At this moment, everyone noticed the two people walking out. They were both wearing masks but had an extraordinary aura. They wanted to take a few photos. When Bojio saw this scene, her heart was in turmoil. After all, she hadn't expected Grandfather Butler to drive such a car. It was fine on Fifth Avenue. But this was China, it was too eye-catching. Chapter 1285. In order to avoid being recognized. Bojio held on to Qin Mo's wrist and entered the car. After the car door closed, she looked up and smiled faintly. This is Grandfather Butler, a relative who watched me grow up. Qin Mo lifted the corner of his eyes and met the gaze from the rearview mirror. That gaze made him smile. Grandfather Butler. How could the old man not hear the nonchalance in his words? This man wasn't born to be obedient. Now that he was so obedient, it made him frown. But looking at the young master's expression, he was happy. The old man retracted his gaze and showed his professionalism as a butler. Young lord called Grandfather Butler. Young Master Qin is a guest, you don't have to be so polite. Qin Mo understood the meaning behind his words. He touched his teeth with the tip of his tongue and smiled innocently. Finally, someone knew to be on guard against him. But he was probably the only one who had never thought about being on guard against him. Qin Mo's gaze landed on Bojio's face again. If he wanted to take her away, he would have to go through the old man first. Qin Mo's intuition was terrifyingly accurate. Grandfather Butler was also a doctor. He knew the effects of hypnosis. But at the same time, he understood that he wouldn't interfere with his young lord's decision. But there was one thing he could try to see if he could recover the man's memory. You haven't eaten yet. There are fresh ingredients at home. Young Master Qin, what would you like to eat? Since the other party was polite, Qin Mo wouldn't tear apart his darkness. He continued to smile. Anything is fine. Let's see what my sugar daddy wants to eat. Sugar daddy. Grandfather Butler glanced sideways at his young lord. His head hurt slightly. What kind of title was that? How many times had he told his young lord to be a lady? Bojio smiled beautifully. She was satisfied with the title. Hot pot, it'll be quick. With that, she tilted her head and grabbed Qin Mo's hand, placing it in her palm. Brother Mo, you have to remember something. MMH? Qin Mo raised a brow. Bojio smiled suavely. My favorite game is the keyboard, my favorite food is hot pot, and my favorite person is you. Qin Mo stilled, something surging in his eyes before he slowly lowered them. I don't know what I like to play or eat the most, but there's one thing I'm sure of, you're the only person I like the most. Yes, this was the perfect prey. Especially when her eyes only fell on him, they were incomparably beautiful. However, the premise was that she would only be good to him. Qin Mo thought about it. He hadn't paid much attention to what she had said before. It was time to give it a try. Since he wanted people to leave willingly, he had to act a little more convincing. Qin Mo held her in his hands. His eyes were focused, but at the same time, there was an unsettling darkness. At the very least, when Grandpa Butler saw this scene, his mood was quite complicated. According to his analysis of Qin Mo, once his hypnosis was activated, anyone would become dispensable in his eyes. This was related to the environment he grew up in. He had an indifferent personality, and in the past, he had a responsibility. Now that there was nothing that could restrain him, he naturally didn't need to be afraid of anything. There were too many criminal psychologists in this world, and under normal circumstances, they all had a motive. Chin Mo was scary because he didn't have a motive. Even if he committed a crime one day, it might just be because his hands were itchy and he was unhappy. However, such a person actually followed his young lord back to Jiang City and clearly expressed his possessiveness. The old butler didn't know if he should be happy for his young lord or worried. If Chin Mo wanted to do something now, even he wouldn't be able to stop him. The journey from the airport to her apartment wasn't long. It was a commercial apartment that Bojio had specially chosen. This apartment was the closest to the Chin Group's club. In less than 3 days, it would be more convenient for the team members to gather together for training. There would definitely be people watching over there. Bojio was very familiar with their methods. It was safest for Lin Feng and the others to come here. Moreover, with Grandpa Butler around, they could avoid other problems. Since the Almighty loved to play games so much, perhaps he would remember something when he saw his team members. She had communicated with Movie Queen about this. Movie Queen felt that this was the most reliable method. She knew most of her son's life. Other than business games, it was his team members. He didn't spend much time at home. Bojio realized that from a certain perspective, the heavens had never been gentle to this man. At least she had Grandpa Butler by her side. When she had been young, she would talk to others when she missed him. According to his personality, no one would tell him when he missed her. Bojio tilted her head and looked at the transparent hand. The poker cards appeared again. She knew it was a precaution against a new place. Her phone rang again. It was Lin Feng. Bojio opened it and put it on speaker. Hello. Hey, little spade, you're back, aren't you? Lin Feng's voice was filled with excitement. F***ck, you're back faster than I expected. Where's Captain? Bojio glanced at him, a question in her eyes. She smiled. Where can Brother Mo be? Of course, he's beside me. How did you know we're back? The news on the internet. You guys sure are eye-catching, Rolls-Royce. Outsiders might be looking at the liveliness, but we are looking at the details. Lin Feng laughed heartily. He was clearly very happy. Just the back view of you and Captain, I can tell with one look. Bojio held her forehead. Even a naive person like Lin Feng could tell. Chin Mo's fans would definitely be able to recognize the tall and slender figure. Fortunately, Grandpa Butler had done the follow-up work. No one would be able to find them. I'll inform everyone and meet you guys now. Lin Feng was about to move. Bojio glanced at him from the side. Tomorrow. Tomorrow? Lin Feng frowned. Since they were back, it would be better to meet them as soon as possible. The Asian Cup was starting and their competition would be arranged by their captain. Bojio replied, she could see the Almighty's wariness. Wariness meant that he didn't like it. After all, for someone with amnesia, it would be difficult for him to accept the settings given to him in just one day. From a certain point of view, it was too much. Bojio wanted them to meet as soon as possible, but she seemed to have forgotten something. The Almighty needed a period of acceptance. Chapter 1286. Lin Feng looked at the phone that had been hung up, feeling a little uneasy. The uneasiness started to grow along with the comments online. Just as Bojio had said, even he could recognize them from the back. Some of the fans could recognize them too. The already soft voices of resistance. For some reason, it grew louder. When the public relations department contacted Feng Yi, they wanted to tell him that someone was behind the scenes, but they couldn't pinpoint the exact company. That was strange. But this time, Feng Yi didn't care. He glanced at the photo online, glancing up with a smile. Assistant Su. Boss Feng. The assistant hadn't expected Feng Yi to look at him in such a manner. Feng Yi lit a cigarette, holding it between his fingers. Some stories can only be told to people who understand. Many people wouldn't understand how much effort she put in to bring Qin Mo back. So forget it, it's good that he's back. Assistant Su felt that Boss Feng was different. Feng Shang felt the same way. His brother was indeed different. In front of others, he was still the playful fox Feng who wouldn't allow anyone to take advantage of Supreme Alliance. But behind others, he was a heavy smoker. It seemed as though he knew something but couldn't change it. Feng Shang stammered as he asked the person, but he couldn't get an answer. But he was happy. They had seen the photo online. Coco and him, along with the other teams, were all happy on the official Weibo, tagging Spade Z. At the dining table, Bo Jiu was still thinking of a way to get the Almighty to accept her. After much thought, she decided to find evidence to convince him. That was the most direct method. The Almighty had always been a suspicious person. And now, he was probably even more so. The hot pot lasted for a long time. Qin Mo watched as the fellow lowered his head to scoop up the mutton for him. For some reason, the food in his mouth tasted good. The old butler took in the scene as well. Did his young lord bring back a little princess to pamper? Young Master Qin was such a big man, couldn't he use his chopsticks? Letting out a long sigh, the old butler knew in his heart that the words he had told the young master to be reserved were basically treated as trash. The hot pot is greasy, and there's Chinese oolong tea in the pot. Young master, do you want to drink it here or go to the sofa? The old butler picked up his pocket watch and glanced at it. Even though he had come to Jiang City, his British aura hadn't changed at all. Both places aren't good, I'll head back to my room with Brother Mo. Bo Jiu turned, wanting to grab a tissue to wipe her mouth. Unexpectedly, the moment she moved, she felt something on her face. It was the Almighty's fingertips, slowly caressing her lips. His movements were very natural. In order to make it easier for the Almighty to clean her up, she lifted her handsome face, not forgetting to smile. When Qin Mo saw her smile, there was only one thought in his mind. How could this prey be so likable? The old butler, who had always been a gentleman, coughed lightly and said, then I'll go and clean up another room. Too troublesome. Bo Jiu smiled mischievously. There aren't enough rooms, I can share a room with Brother Mo. Qin Mo glanced at the double-story apartment in front of him, his fingers still feeling a certain someone's delicate skin. He didn't expose her. The old butler inhaled deeply. It seemed like it was a waste to find such a huge room for his young lord. There were 8 rooms, how could it not be enough? But Grandfather Butler knew what his young lord was thinking. He lifted the teapot with his white-gloved hand. I'll send it to your room and bring a set of pajamas for young Master Qin. All right. Bo Jiu replied without the slightest hint of embarrassment or heartbeat. Qin Mo supported his chin with his hand, his thin lips curving up without a trace. He had never seen such a proactive prey. It was a rare sight. The old butler was still observing Qin Mo. He had wanted to discuss something with the man, but when he took off his shirt and revealed something on his neck, his fingers trembled. He turned towards Bo Jiu. That was why. He remembered that his young lord had asked for many such amulets when she had been young. At that time, she had been like a little monk. Even though she had been at the Fifth Avenue, she had been close to a senior monk. That senior monk's amulet wasn't common. The old butler retracted his gaze. He didn't stay any longer. Even so, Qin Mo noticed it. When he changed his sleepiness, his dark eyes flickered under the light. Bo Jiu wasn't in a hurry to drink the tea. She could tell that Grandfather Butler was looking for her. She reached out and pushed Qin Mo into the bathroom. Brother Mo, shower first. We can talk after. Qin Mo smiled. It was a charming smile, but there was a dark fog floating in his eyes. What a pity. What's a pity? Bo Jiu arched a brow. Qin Mo bent down, his breath landing on her ear. I thought we would shower together. After all, we are lovers, aren't we? It's a pity that even you are hiding something from me. How can I be at ease with such prey by my side? With this in mind, Qin Mo's eyes dimmed. Bo Jiu couldn't see from this angle. She hugged his waist and smiled. No, Brother Mo, I realized that you like to tease me. Qin Mo didn't have any warning signs when she hugged him. He thought for a moment and scoffed. She was coaxing him again. She knew how to do it. I want to shower together. Bo Jiu's smile didn't diminish. But I have to talk to Grandfather Butler first. I have to tell him that no matter what you become, you will always be my little Princess Qin. Qin Mo looked at her. After a moment, he laughed coldly. Little Princess Qin. Where did she get her nickname from? Brother Mo, you loved it when I called you that. Bo Jiu looked sad. You even forgot about that. Sigh. Hearing her sigh, Qin Mo lifted the corner of his lips, revealing a thought-provoking expression. Then he held onto her waist, his breath seductive. Don't worry, even if I forget everything, I won't forget how I want you. Which man would like to be called a little princess? Little gangster, don't you know how to lie? Qin Mo found it amusing. His kiss carried a sense of punishment. He bent down and nibbled on her neck. His breath was a little hot and imprinted on her fair skin. There was a wave of irresistible itchiness. Bo Jiu didn't know where to put her hands. In the end, she arched her back. Brother Mo. Chapter 1287. Flirting, he only knew how to flirt. After pushing him away for a long time, Bo Jiu rubbed her own face. She remembered the Almighty's words and laughed softly. Did he think she didn't dare? Once she was done talking to Grandfather Butler, she would look for him in the bathroom. She could use this chance to record the Almighty's actions. She could play how he had flirted with her for him after he regained his memory. That could be considered a dark history. Bo Jiu pressed her fingers against her lips, smiling nonchalantly. Grandfather Butler and his young lord had a tacit understanding. He was already waiting in the living room, the pocket watch still in his hand. Bo Jiu walked over. Don't worry. The 3 words made the old butler sigh. His current situation is very unstable. No, that's not right. It should be said that his current situation is very stable. He even knows to disguise his killing intent. Young master, you should know how dangerous he is. He didn't hurt anyone. The moment she finished her sentence, she knew she was being unreasonable. After all, the Almighty had tried to hypnotize others before, but she had stopped him from doing so. The old butler swept a glance at her clean and smiling face. With you around, he will definitely restrain himself if he wants you. Unexpectedly, his young lord laughed even more. MMH, Grandfather Butler, I'm telling you, that's how he cares about me, in the past and now. Old butler. Was that the main point? Bo Jiu had been stifled when she had been in the military. She had only told little Blackie about her love life, which wasn't enough. Now that she finally had the chance to meet Grandfather Butler, she grabbed a pillow and propped her chin up. She smiled sweetly. He doesn't say it, but his actions are honest, and he is even jealous of himself. He has always been adorable. The old butler maintained his gentlemanly image. Once again, I understand the Chinese saying that a grown girl can't be kept at home. Grandfather Butler, if that's what you're worried about, you don't have to worry at all. I'll stay at home and trick Brother Mo into marrying into our family, Bo Jiu suggested with a smile. The old butler caressed his temples. He knew his young lord was determined. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Qin family would agree to their precious young master marrying into the Yin family. The Yin family would probably go crazy. His young master had hardened his heart and only wanted this person. You should know that he's pretending to be good to you right now. Anyone who is hypnotized will have a huge change in personality, and it's the same for him. I'm afraid he's interested in you now, but young lord, what happens when he loses interest in you? The old butler was to the point. Chapter 1288. So, Grandfather Butler, look, he doesn't remember anything and is still protecting the things I gave him. This isn't interest. Bojo glanced over, her eyes dark. Besides, I'm not a good person. Even if it's interest, if I can make him fall in love with me once and twice, I can make him fall in love with me a third time. The old butler paused for a moment before breaking into a smile. Young lord, you should know that I will support whatever decision you make. But there's one thing, I won't let anyone bully you. That cold fellow from the Chin family always made the girl take the initiative. He wasn't a gentleman at all. Bojo thought. Now that the Almighty wasn't bullying her, she wanted to bully him instead. She thought for a moment before bringing the small accessories in the room next door upstairs. She was going to take a photo later. The old butler knew that his young lord had been waiting for someone ever since she was young. She had always been very familiar with his good points. When she was young, she would have big round eyes. Whenever she saw a child, she would comment, Grandfather Butler, let me tell you, he isn't as good looking as my pet. My pet just has to stand there and he doesn't need to say anything to make people like him. Really, he's really attractive. He would even tie my shoelaces for me. Every time my shoelaces were untied, he would tie them for me. Praising it so much that it could only exist in the heavens and not on earth. It was just a longing in the deepest part of her heart. Now, he was by her side. His young lord smiled a lot more. Let's just leave it at that. Grandpa Butler wanted to see if there was any way to let that cold kid of the Chin family recover his memory faster. Chin Mo knew that his memory was incomplete. But to him, memory didn't seem to be of much use. Before he came, he was thinking about what his prey would say. As for what her grandfather Butler would say, Chin Mo didn't need to think to know. It was to remind her to be careful of him. Ha! Chin Mo chuckled and hit himself. He was like a demon. He appeared silently and left without a sound. A certain person's words seemed to be repeating in his ears. It seemed to seep in bit by bit. Unconsciously, the corners of his lips would rise. Chin Mo didn't want her to know that he could hear her words. Hence, he filled the bathtub with water in advance. The phone she had given him was still in the room. She was indeed an idiot. She had even given him a phone. He clicked on the desktop. There weren't many icons on it. The one that was opened the most was a game. Chin Mo glanced at it but didn't open it. Instead, he opened the web page and searched for something. Just as he said, after listening to the conversation in the living room, Chin Mo really sat in the bathtub and waited for a certain someone. His body was half tilted, and the white foam in the bathtub rose up, along with the misty water vapor. It made him look more abstinent. However, it was still different. Even he himself did not realize that there was a smile on his lips. This was the scene Bojo saw when she entered with her things. The sexy Almighty's body leaned against the bathtub, his long legs crossed lazily. The light shone down and refracted on the pure white walls. The man's entire face was illuminated by the light. He was so handsome that it made people feel a little dizzy. She didn't know what he was looking at. It could make him smile lazily, without any defense, and even with a little pride. Chapter 1289. He seemed to have sensed her presence. The Almighty, who was still swiping his phone, lifted his brows. His arrogance disappeared, as though he was trying to hide it. Then, he freed one of his hands and gestured in her direction. That hand had distinct joints and was slender and beautiful. Under the light, it seemed to be transparent. Bojo thought to herself, Grandfather Butler had said so much but he hadn't mentioned anything about how to deal with the Almighty's honey trap. But on second thought, there wasn't a need to deal with it. When the Almighty used his honey trap, it was best to pounce on her. There was a saying that was right, when the Almighty wanted to seduce someone, it didn't matter. Bojo walked over, curious. What are you looking at? If the Almighty saw the icon on her phone, he would have a sudden impulse to play a game. That way, he would know their intimacy level in the game. Unexpectedly, he chuckled. Do you want to know? Bojo nodded. Chin Mo's voice was calm. Come closer, I'll show you. So mysterious. Bojo took another step towards the bathtub and was about to tilt her head. Just then, he raised his hand and grabbed her wrist. There was a loud splash. Her entire body was soaked in the bathtub, her hair and body wet. Especially the white shirt she was wearing, it became faintly translucent. He could see the bandages inside, as well as the soft semicircle, white and curved. As for everything else, it was a mess. He took the opportunity to hold her waist, allowing her to sit in his arms. The steam started to spread and the temperature of the water was slightly high. The moment Bojo entered, her body trembled. Moreover, the way he was hugging her made her half a head taller. This way, his breath would land on her chest, accompanied by the heat in the bathroom, making it impossible for her to hide. My sugar daddy, have you forgotten what I said on the plane? On the plane? Bojo arched a brow. Chin Mo caressed her waist, his voice carrying a smile. When there's no one around, you can take out the books I gave to sugar daddy to read and learn. Aren't you curious about what I'm reading? Take it. A phone was shoved into Bojo's palm. She glanced over instinctively. Bojo was stunned by his gaze. What was the Almighty looking at? Was it completely devoid of godhood? Overbearing CEO falls in love with me. She usually wouldn't open such a book. However, the title of the book wasn't important at this point. The main thing was that when the Almighty flipped to this page, the male and female leads were flirting. The feeling of the plot was there, and the location was still the office. The corners of Chin Mo's lips curled up again as he watched a certain someone's thin lips slightly pursed. He leaned over while hugging her, the heat from his body pressing against her ear. His smile was low and pleasant. But it's a pity that this book doesn't have a bathroom scene. But it doesn't matter, compared to those useless descriptions, I'm better at this. Before Bojo could react, he kissed her through her wet shirt. The buttons of the shirt were bitten off by him. It was a light kiss, but it made her hands tremble. Chapter 1290. Try what? The things described in the books? Even a gangster like Bojo couldn't help blushing at the thought of that scene. Besides, the Almighty's hand was still holding onto her waist. He didn't seem to have any intention of letting go. Instead, he peeled off her shirt, dragged her back, and kissed her. She couldn't see anything clearly. Even the bathtub was filled with white foam. Through the thick heat, the fog seemed to be able to reach her eyes. The scene under the light was beautiful. It was probably because they were both so good-looking that the air was even hotter. At this moment, Chin Mo was like a dark noble that appeared in stories. Anyone who liked British movies would know. Handsome vampire nobles loved to drag young ladies into the bathtub and give them the pleasure they had never experienced before. Chin Mo was doing the same thing. However, he didn't bite her throat. Instead, he planted multiple kisses on her collarbone before moving downwards. It was so tempting that it made her soul tremble. Bojo didn't know when her jeans had disappeared. Her overly long shirt reached her thighs and floated in the water like flower petals. Her fair and translucent shoulders were snow-white under the light. It was easy to arouse one's thoughts. From the start to the end, Chin Mo hugged her waist tightly, never letting her leave his arms. When he saw this scene, his gaze deepened, and he bit her shoulder. His breathing also became a little unstable, especially when he heard the moans coming from the person in his embrace. He could not help but gasp. If it wasn't for a voice reminding him, he couldn't continue. How could he allow his prey to control his thoughts? As a guide, the person who should be grasped should be the other party. But it was this person's every even the way she looked at him with tears in her eyes, that made him want to have her completely at that moment. He felt inexplicably irritated. Chin Mo took a deep breath and retracted his hand. Then, he pulled the towel and wrapped her up. He couldn't come into contact with her for now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to control himself. Was the feeling of her skin too good, or was she really like a siren? She looked at you clearly, but it made you want to destroy her. Bojo didn't know why the Almighty was suddenly awake. There was a splash of water. By the time she reacted, her head was already covered by a white towel. You can wash the rest yourself. I'll get you a glass of milk. My sugar daddy, you still need to nourish yourself. You'll feel better when you're chubbier. Bojo, Grandpa Butler said he was pretending to be too gentle. How was this gentle? Wasn't his tongue just as venomous? The Almighty would probably feel uncomfortable if he didn't have a sharp tongue for a day. Especially when it came to speaking ill of her. Bojo pressed the towel over her head with one hand. Suddenly, she broke into a smile. Did he think that she couldn't tell? Every time he flirted with her until she couldn't take it anymore, he would suddenly stop. It seemed that he didn't want her. Bojo smiled again, a devilish glint in her eyes. There was one thing that the Almighty seemed to have gotten wrong. Should he tell her about it? He didn't have the final say. Whoosh. Chapter 1291. There were still water droplets on her jade-white ankles. Her back was wrapped in a towel. Her entire body was covered in water, glowing under the sunlight. Her eyes were as black as the fog. Indeed, she looked like a siren. Especially when she smiled, the corners of her lips curved slightly. She walked tall and straight, exuding an extreme sense of beauty. She didn't seem embarrassed because of her appearance. Bojo touched her cheeks, looking suave. She had originally planned to pounce on him and get it over with. Who knew that before she could do anything, that person would pull her into his arms again? Wrapped around her was a dry towel. Even her eyes were wrapped in it. Brother Mo, Bojo felt that the Almighty wasn't fighting fair. She couldn't even see, how was she supposed to attack? Chin Mo watched as the little hooligan tried to act cool after being drenched. Now, she looked like an exasperated kitten, stretching out her claws in an attempt to act coquettishly. MMH? He arched a brow, pressing her head onto his shoulder. Bojo finally calmed down. She realized that the towel wasn't just around her, there were two of them. The Almighty was also wrapped inside. She was in direct contact with his skin. MMH, that was how it should be. Why was he trying to distance himself from her? Bojo's eyes turned into crescents, her hands about to move. What are you trying to do? Chin Mo freed one hand, pressing down on her restless claws. He arched a brow, finding it funny. It seems like my sugar daddy likes me a lot. Bojo lifted her head, looking at Chin Mo with a wicked smile. That's right, that's right. Even if you like me, you can't touch me. Chin Mo adjusted her, looking as though he was taking care of a domestic prey. Turn around and look at the mirror. Bojo arched a brow. What am I doing? Blow your hair. She had to do something that wouldn't let her imagination run wild to divert her attention. Hence, the Almighty came out with a hair dryer. He raised one hand high, his aura strong. Bojo took a moment. She couldn't force him. It wouldn't be good to bully the Almighty when he lost his memory. Alright, blow your hair. When she turned around, her entire back was leaning against his chest. The two of them were wrapped in the same towel. It was neither too big nor too small, just perfect. Even the Almighty wouldn't be able to take advantage of them in such a position. When Chin Mo heard her sigh, he laughed again. Why? Are you disappointed that I blew your hair? What bad things are you thinking about all day long? I want to sleep with you. Bojo felt the gentle breeze blowing over her head. She smiled brightly. It's so obvious. Brother Mo, can't you tell? Chin Mo looked at that face and couldn't help but reach out to pinch it. I'm very expensive. Let's dry your silver hair first. Silver hair. Bojo tilted her head. The most popular granny gray. It's quite handsome. Isn't it handsome? Chin Mo met her clear eyes. The tear mole was especially obvious. Her nose, mouth, and even her collarbone were beautiful. His body moved, bending down to kiss her lips. His eyes were deep. You're really pretty. Until now, she was the most pleasing prey he had ever seen. Not as pretty as you. Bojo's words were true. Little Princess Chin had been pretty since she was young. Chin Mo ran his fingers through the youngster's hair slowly. The hairdryer was still blowing gently. Are you sure you want to use the word pretty to describe me? No man would like to have such an adjective on him. Devastatingly beautiful. Bojo thought about the idiom she had learned. Chin Mo arched a brow. Femme fatale. These 4 words should fit the description, right? Chin Mo laughed and said slowly, why don't you say I'm Daji who bewitches the nation? How can you be compared to Daji? Bojo laughed. You're much prettier than Daji. Since you're so comfortable to hug, I won't throw you out the window. Chin Mo had just thought of this when the youngster continued. Brother Mo, I'm definitely an incapable ruler in ancient times. If you're Daji and you want to bewitch the nation, I'll definitely let you do it. Don't you think I'm too rash? If others say bad things about you, I'll want to beat them up. No wonder you always said I was rash when I was young. I'm quite rash. When Chin Mo heard this, he turned off the hairdryer and tapped her face rhythmically with his fingers. I don't think you're rash at all. Every word she said seemed to be able to seep into her heart. She was so cunning. I'm still rash. For example, I really want to sleep with you. Bojo tilted her head, her tone lazy. So, Brother Mo, if I were to touch you, you have to stop me. I can't stand seduction, you can use it on me more often. Chin Mo laughed softly. He wasn't pretending anymore. He placed the hairdryer aside, his aura a little distant. You can even tell that I'm using seduction. It's a pity you didn't use it all the way. Bojo laughed lightly and sneezed. You didn't even let me have a taste of the sweetness. Chin Mo glanced at the person in front of him and frowned. Then he lifted his arms and carried her horizontally. He walked into the room and stuffed her into the blanket. Ah! Bojo exclaimed. You're covering me so much, it's too heavy. There was only a blanket between them. After removing it, he didn't even let her have a taste of the tofu. Where's the medicine? Chin Mo didn't answer her question. Bojo was pressed down and couldn't move. What medicine? Flu medicine, Chin Mo replied, pressing the person who was about to pop her head back in. Bojo suddenly understood. The Almighty was concerned about her sneeze and thought she was sick again. Was that why he was looking for medicine? In the end, she managed to get a taste of the sweetness. Bojo only revealed a pair of eyes. Under the blanket, her lips were curved into a smile. Chin Mo tilted his head. When he saw this scene, he knew he had overreacted. His fingers paused for a moment before he sat by the bed, smiling nonchalantly. Are you proud? No, actually, I'm feeling a little cold and uncomfortable. It must be from the bath just now. Bojo pressed her head to make herself look more sincere. Chin Mo's smile deepened. Cold. Then add another quilt. The Almighty was a man of his words. He pulled open the wardrobe and retrieved a summer blanket, placing it over her body. Are you warmer now? What else could she say? This was her act and she had to finish it. I'm just a little thirsty. Drinking water would cool her down. Chin Mo arched a brow. Thirsty? I'll get you a cup of hot water, how about that? Hot water? Bojo waved her hands. Forget it, I'm not that thirsty. Since the Almighty was so black-bellied, he might as well continue to seduce her. Chapter 1292. The Almighty was still smiling when he said this, his breath landing beside her ear. It was slightly seductive. Bojo tilted her head. Ice and fire, hot and cold at the same time. It's not good for my body if this continues. Chin Mo stilled, not expecting such an answer. His thin lips landed on her forehead. What about now? It's hot. Bojo smiled. Brother Mo, I just ate a piece of candy, do you want a kiss? I guarantee it'll be sweet. Chin Mo removed a layer of the blanket. After hearing her words, he arched a brow lazily. In your dreams, little gangster. Sleeping on the same bed without a kiss is the real gangster. Bojo took a deep breath, her pale face tinged with a tinge of red. She wanted to kick the blanket away. The moment she moved, Chin Mo pressed down on her legs, his voice deep. Do you want to catch a cold? The blanket is thick. Bojo didn't want to hug him through the blanket as it would be too distant. Chin Mo glanced at her rascally look. Do you regret exposing my honey trap? Yes. Bojo watched as he reached out to pull her over and changed the blanket. The weight on her body was light but the temperature was comfortable. She took the opportunity to hug his waist. Chin Mo didn't reject her but he pointed at a certain prey. Don't move your hands. It's a little difficult, Bojo replied seriously. Why don't I play for a while? With both hands, I'll be able to maintain some self-control. Chin Mo replied, his emotions indiscernible. Bojo knew he had seen through her probing. She took the phone over and thought for a moment. Brother Mo, what? Chin Mo leaned against the headboard, his fingers twirling a poker card. Bojo tilted her head. Do you want to take a look at your official Weibo account? You want me to take a look? Chin Mo's gaze deepened when he asked this. Bojo nodded. I want you to know there are many people waiting for you. Chin Mo didn't say anything. He emptied one hand, his expression nonchalant. It didn't matter if he took a look or not. He wasn't interested in the past. But from the looks of it, she wanted him to take a look. Chin Mo's breath turned cold. Well, no one would like the current him. It was probably the same for her. Chin Mo lifted his thin lips, his eyes cold. Phone. Bojo moved her fingers and turned off the screen. Forget it. Chin Mo's expression was noble. If you don't like it, then don't. Bojo laughed. It doesn't matter if I lose my memory or not. It's better this way, no one will snatch it from me. Chin Mo's gaze trembled, but he quickly regained his composure. He said slowly, then you have to watch over me. I will, Bojo replied, gripping the phone in her hands. Chin Mo glanced over. Aren't we going to play games? I thought you didn't like it. I'm not fighting anymore. Bojo pressed the tip of her tongue against her cheek. Chin Mo tapped on her phone screen. If you like it, I'll watch you play. That way, you won't be up to no good. Bojo arched a brow. Brother Mo, if you don't say the last sentence, Sugar Daddy will like you more. That's a pity, the last sentence is what I really mean. Chin Mo patted her face lightly, his voice lazy and pleasant. Let's start, let me see how you play. Chapter 1293. The game's music started playing. This was the first time Chin Mo found someone so thick-skinned and likable. But it was understandable. A domestic prey would definitely be pleasing to the eye. At this moment, Bojo entered the page and chose her character. She was using an alternate account so her level wasn't eye-catching. But the name. Chin Mo arched a brow. Little sweetheart Chin is mine. Bojo's scalp turned numb. Brother Mo, don't mind the details. Why would I? You're my sugar daddy after all. Chin Mo leaned over and bit her ear. Bojo trembled, the tips of her ears turning red. Chin Mo was satisfied, his gaze returning to the screen. There's someone talking on the screen. Bojo saw it too, it was someone fighting for a position in the wilderness. She didn't allow it. That person was obviously unhappy. He didn't switch and continued to drag it out. It wasn't good for development to play with a temper. Bojo knew that and didn't say much since it was common sense to fight for money before capturing the person. But her teammate was still talking. The one playing as an assassin, look at my level and look at yours. Can't you tell I'm 2 levels higher than you? Why are you trying to snatch it from me? Let me tell you, don't scam me or I'll complain about you. Chin Mo's eyes dimmed as he listened to the words that came from the phone. His initial disinterest turned to one person. What is he doing? That was when Bojo realized that the Almighty had really lost his memory. He was just like a new person. He's farming. Assassins have to farm beasts to raise their finances or they won't be able to develop. Every assassin has to think of a way to get to level 4 as soon as possible, and the most effective way is to farm beasts. Hearing this, Chin Mo smiled, reached out his hand, and asked her to change her route. What is it? Bojo was confused. What was the Almighty up to? Chin Mo tapped the screen. I'm playing. You know how to play? Bojo's eyes shone with surprise. Chin Mo replied faintly, no, I saw what you did just now. There's a button that allows you to farm beasts. That was right. But... Bojo watched as the Almighty stood motionless in the bushes, waiting for someone to farm beasts. What was he doing? Very quickly, Bojo understood his intentions. That was because the voice of their jungler rang out again, F***CK, I've been farming for half a day. Next. That person realized that no matter if it was blue, red, or any other small monster, they would all be accurately snatched away at the last slash. He was thoroughly cursing over there. Bojo watched as the Almighty lifted his fingers slightly and pressed the voice button on his phone, continuing with his job of snatching kills. I'm hanging up. F***CK. This time, he typed. His teammates were helpless. All they wanted was for that high-ranked player to play well. That person snorted and split the message into 3 parts. Tell that little sweetheart Chin to stop stealing my beasts, and I'll go out. With that kind of positioning, what else can he do other than steal my wild beasts? Anyone can kill him. Bojo glanced over and reached for her phone. She typed a few words. You don't want to come out? Then don't come out. As soon as she finished speaking, she controlled the game character in her hand. Like a cold gust of wind, she swept towards the wilderness on the other side. Her clothes fluttered, and even her sword glowed with a white light. You're courting death, the assassin said. Chapter 1294. Double kill. Double kill. Double kill. How could it be a double kill? The assassin who had been yelling just a moment ago suddenly froze. He looked at the screen. After the kill, the elegant figure used a skill and leaped back to his original position. This caused the enemy sorcerer to chase after him. That person didn't return to the tower. Instead, he hid in the bushes after collecting a wave of soldiers. At this moment, he had recovered to half his HP. On the map, that person leaped out. The sorcerer saw this and quickly attacked. However, that person dodged the freeze with a zigzag movement. Then, the sound of Sword God rang out. It was very rhythmic. Once, twice, thrice. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Triple kill. Triple kill. It was continuous, without a break. Even the time couldn't be measured in minutes because it was too fast. The team members were still reviving in the spring. Looking at the scene on the map, everyone was stunned. The enemy sorcerer who died even typed a string of words on the public chat. She probably didn't expect to be killed. After all, she was at full HP. And she remembered that the opponent was at low HP. Vampiric knife, this person used a vampiric knife? He used it so early, how confident was he in his fighting style? His teammates glanced at each other. Before they could even react, Yi-Chin had already left. The game's music blared again. Tyrant has been killed, the entire team's experience has doubled. The first to react wasn't his teammates but the enemy assassin. I've been fighting Tyrant for half a day. However, just as he was typing, what he didn't expect was that after killing 2 monsters, the white figure leaped back and aimed an electrode at his back, followed by a big move. He jumped back in fright and returned to the city with low HP. That scared me, I almost died. I remember that the jungler isn't high level. The high level one is the other one. Why is he so fierce? I don't even dare to leave the tower. Me too, what kind of maneuver is that? It's unbelievable. Compared to the opponent's panic. On the other side, the assassin who was yelling that he wouldn't go out unless he was allowed to have fun turned red and white. He pressed on his phone. You're not a substitute player, are you? Bojo didn't bother about him. She cleared her own jungle in a few moments. She didn't just clear her own jungle. When she plundered the opponent's jungle, she would definitely take some wild boars with her. She successfully explained the phrase, "Your jungle is my home." She didn't snatch the title of Pig Hierarch for nothing. His DPS was the highest in the entire game. Wherever he went, he would either take away a player's head or a wild monster. It wasn't that the opponent didn't want to chase after her, but the hero she was controlling was too agile and fast. If they went after him alone, they would definitely be killed in seconds. When the 3 of them chased after him, he ran away. It was as if he was walking someone. After walking them for a while, he attacked them from behind and dealt a set of damage. In the blink of an eye, their long-ranged ADC was crippled. A score of 0-6 was going against the wind. In the middle of the game, when the opponent saw Bojo's figure on the screen, he didn't even dare to come out. The saddest thing was that without control, it wasn't safe to stand under the tower alone. The white figure was so fierce that he could cross the tower and kill. Moreover, his HP recovered extremely quickly. This wasn't fun at all. Chapter 1295. Those who played this game would usually want to score higher. Besides, everyone knew that a skilled jungler could bring up the tempo of the match. It wasn't easy to find such a god. Before it was over, someone started to send a message. Jungler little brother, why don't you add me as a friend? I'm so cute, can't you stop killing me and help me score higher? Under normal circumstances, Bojo wouldn't look at the public chat. But today, Chin Mo was here and he would look. When he saw the message, Chin Mo broke into a smile. It was a beautiful smile but there was a hint of coldness in his lips. Is she flirting with you? MMH? Bojo finally noticed the next sentence, freeing her hand to reply. Not little brother. The other side continued to act coquettishly. What is he if not little brother? Uncle? Uncle is good too, uncle is more charming, moi. It's little sister. The moment Bojo finished typing, she was once again distracted by the Almighty. He hugged her with one hand and tapped on her phone with the other. This time, the Almighty's target was clear. He laughed nonchalantly. Just kill her. Bojo. That wasn't a good way to treat a girl, right? The Almighty probably didn't know how fierce she was when she grabbed someone. What is it? Chin Mo smiled faintly at her face, his fingers tapping against hers, bringing a wave of numbness. Are you really going to have tender feelings for the fairer sex? He paused, as though he knew what Bojo liked. Send her back to the city, there will be a reward. The Almighty's last sentence was too tempting. She would send the coquettish one back to the city. Bojo lifted her sword. While everyone was still immersed in the words its little sister, she leaped over and killed the confused sorcerer in the middle lane. The moment the sorcerer saw that he was dead, he typed, F*CK. The next moment, the other side burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, who asked you to pretend to be a girl? You're screwed this time. Frequent surfers would know that there was a popular saying in the game. If you realized your opponent was good at jungling, pretend to be a girl and act coquettishly. 90% of the time, you would be able to avoid death. That mage had been playing this trick for a long time, and it was a tried and tested move. That was how unlucky he was today. Soon, he realized a problem. The worst part was that he had just died. Rather, wherever he went. That jungler followed them wherever they went. They didn't even care about the big picture, just to kill him. The male magician was dumbfounded. Unless he didn't step out of the house, he would definitely die if he did. What kind of grudge? He typed on the public chat, "Handsome Missy, you don't have to go so far, right? I was just acting coquettishly, but you caught me so tightly that I have nothing left to live for." Bojo arched a brow when she read the message. The Almighty told her not to reply and to continue killing. She didn't agree to this. Instead, she stopped and typed out a string of words. "My boyfriend saw you acting coquettishly just now. He's watching me right now. He's jealous. I have to think of a way to make him happy." A string of dots and dots appeared on the public screen. It wasn't uncommon to see people flaunting their affection in games. But in the past, they had never been abused like this. But today, in order to make her boyfriend happy, a girl kept catching people. To be honest, these big men were really abused. Chapter 1296. Wasn't this something a boy would do to coax a girl? When they played games, it was always their girlfriends who played meat, and they who played jungles. They had to die in front of their girlfriends. Why was it that everyone else's style was the same? Tell me, how could it not be cruel? There was no way to play this game. After being captured 4 times, the male mage never left the city again. Every time Bojo was done, she would glance at the Almighty. Yes, he was smiling. There was warmth in his eyes as well. Sigh, little Princess Chin was so cute. What could she do? Continue grabbing. No one could do anything to Bojo. The current situation also confirmed what she had said at the beginning. From start to finish, there was no chance for the other jungler to come out. The man couldn't say anything else. It was a victory without any suspense. The game went on for 10 minutes. Bojo's maneuvering was basically a show. There were even people who directly recorded it, and the title was very appropriate. Have you ever seen a handsome young lady kill someone to make her boyfriend happy? When this video was first released, not many people watched it. But then there was a comment below, "Is the jungler really a girl?" His positioning, mechanics, and hand speed are all unbelievable. His skill level is close to that of a pro player, right? Professional. Don't scare me. Why would I scare you? Look closely. Even some VIP streamers wouldn't be able to play at such a pace. Most importantly, the jungler says she's a girl. I have to say something. I feel like this person's movements are a little familiar. I feel the same way. I won't say her name. I don't want to bring shame to her. But I don't think it's possible. She has disappeared and won't come back. Ahem, I think so too. Let me give you a hint. I'm a fan who likes to be cute on the spot. Look at this ID, it says Little Secretary Chin. Little Secretary. This won't do. The couple fans are starting to make up stories. What I can't stand the most is that, my boyfriend is watching from the side and is jealous, so I have to make him happy. I think it's better not to make wild guesses. Perhaps the name is just a coincidence. The Asian Cup is about to start and Almighty Chin isn't back yet. Besides, it has already been proven that Spade Z is a girl. As a passerby, I just want to say that she should restrain herself. For the sake of Supreme Alliance, she shouldn't come out again. Chapter 1297. Feng Yi had actually told them during the meeting not to reply to any comments on the internet, be it good or bad. He had even set a limit on their internet usage. He was worried that their mental state would be affected. In the esports industry, there were too many people who didn't understand. From the disdain in the past to now, there were finally people who wouldn't say that it was just a gamer. Countless people were putting in hard work. There were also people who found substitutes to do live broadcasts. In order to earn money, they formed a model to please the fans. The fans were the father. As time went by, more and more people felt that they had the right to decide what the team should be like. However, some people seemed to have forgotten. This was esports. On the competitive stage, ability was the final word. People in the industry, when they first came into contact with this industry, they didn't see much potential in it. The reason was simple. They loved it. Perhaps it was hard for girls to understand that feeling. Sitting in a dormitory, pushing the opponent's city, playing games until midnight, kicking their friend's chair, taking out their phone to order takeout, chewing on a chicken wing to start another round. Days like this would never come again after they left school. Hence, they cherished it. Similarly, they hoped that the team that appeared in their youth could go further. They understood what it meant to support them. To buy a ticket and watch them compete unscrupulously like before, winning and even winning for the country. Not like now, where they fell into anxiety again and again. Every time, it was because of some people's love. Was there psychological pressure? Esports players didn't just have psychological pressure. In terms of training hours and computer time, no one could beat them. Simple office workers or students. At most, they would be scolded by their superiors. As for them, they would be attacked by everyone on the internet. They couldn't retaliate, the most they could do was say that they had low standards. Probably no one would care about the lifespan of the industry. Take Yin Wuyao for example. No one knew why he liked to smoke. It could relieve his fatigue and prevent him from worrying too much about his neck. The back of his neck really hurt. When the training was intense, he would sit in front of the computer for 8 to 9 hours. He was also worried that he wouldn't play well during the competition. When the pressure was high, the quality of his sleep was extremely poor. Even now, he would doze off in the day, giving off a feeling that he couldn't wake up. Many people said that it was the aura of the Almighties. He was so lazy that he looked like an otherworldly expert. In fact, they were really sleepy and wanted to sleep whenever they had the time. They had to adjust their mentality by themselves. Lin Feng had originally thought that he would be reprimanded after his rebuttal, so he was prepared. After all, Feng Yi had also called. But this time, for some reason, the voice was different from before. Did you see CEO Qin? We were supposed to meet today, but Little Spade told us to wait until tomorrow. Lin Feng might be naive, but he could tell from his tone. Fox Feng, have you been hiding something from us recently? Feng Yi was still sitting on the office chair. He leaned back and said, there is one thing, but I wasn't sure before. Now, I have a feeling. Lin Feng. Chapter 1298. What do you mean? Fox Feng, are you joking? Even if Captain retires, he would still be better than us. Lin Feng was extremely anxious. To a certain extent, Feng Yi knew every member of Supreme Alliance. Lin Feng was a naive person, the more anxious he was, the more uneasy he was. Feng Yi reached out to press between his brows. There will always be special circumstances. Is Captain's hand completely failing? Lin Feng took 2 steps forward with the phone in his hand. That's fine, as long as Captain watches over us when we play. Actually, I don't agree with Captain playing again. The doctor once said that his hand isn't suitable for gaming, so this is a good chance. Lin Feng spoke more and more. In the end, he raised his hand and ruffled his hair fiercely, his voice wilting. Fox Feng, what exactly happened to Captain? Feng Yi knew he was mentally prepared. Amnesia, he forgot everything, including games and... With that, he paused, adding, we. The word we seemed to have hit Lin Feng's head. He stilled, his eyes turning red. That's why Little Spade brought him back. It's confidential, I don't know the details. Feng Yi tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his voice slow. But fortunately, he wasn't alone. He knew a little about what had happened 3 years ago. It was the same for Lin Feng and the others. That person came back with a hand injury and a high fever, just to be able to make it for the competition. But there were some things that could be missed. What they couldn't forget was the injury on his shoulder. When he changed the bandage, even the ignorant could tell it was a gunshot wound. What did he do when he wasn't around? They weren't sure. But every time he came back, there would be news a few days later about which case had been solved and which overseas compatriots had been sent back safely. Once, twice, thrice. After many times, it would no longer be a coincidence. Others might not know. He, Yunhu, and Lin Feng all had some connections in their families. Furthermore, they had both lived in the same courtyard. It wasn't like they didn't know the connection between them. Feng Yi didn't hold back. Some people would reject their previous lives after losing their memories. Actually, I wasn't the first person to realize that young Master Qin had forgotten how to play games. It was Little Spade. She just sent me a message, so you can be prepared when you meet tomorrow. There's nothing to prepare. Lin Feng stood up, his voice unusually serious. Supreme Alliance's captain will only be Qin Mo. Even if he doesn't know how to game anymore, he will still be our god. No one can replace his position. Feng Yi smiled. Then prepare for tomorrow's meeting. Tell them that you guys should get together before the competition. What about the matter on the internet? Lin Feng coughed lightly. Feng Yi's gaze deepened. I'll handle the public relations and give you a satisfactory answer. From a certain perspective, Feng Yi was also very protective. However, everyone was clear about this. After knowing this, no one would feel good in their hearts. Lying on the bed, Lin Feng was still thinking about how Little Spade must have felt when she was the first to find out. Chapter 1299. Was it painful? Bo Jiu didn't know how it felt. She watched as he took the phone like a new player, not even familiar with the map. Not to mention, he moved slowly and even knocked into the wall. Once upon a time, she had made a vow. She would never let him fall from his pedestal. She could still remember him dressed in white, wielding a long sword. With a wave of his sleeves, he could take away a drop of blood. Even now, there were still videos of his games on the major websites. Be it his movement or his technique. They were all like textbook existences. Only on the map of Hero could he come and go as he pleased, as elegant as the wind. The repeated 3,000 knife cuts and the 5 consecutive kills. It was like a brand, the moment Bo Jiu closed her eyes, she would remember it. That was why she reacted that way when she saw the assassin mocking the Almighty's movement. Those people would never understand. What kind of existence was he? Bo Jiu didn't feel terrible, but her heart ached. She just wanted to make her little Princess Qin happy. She could do anything. Moreover, it was just catching people in the game. She glanced at the Almighty, interested, and started the second round. Bo Jiu understood as she played. The Almighty's interest was to create trouble for her. For example, when she was killing the blue beast, he would point his finger over and control the character to retreat. Her previous attacks would be in vain. She wouldn't have enough aggro and would have to pull the monster again. When she killed someone, the Almighty never stopped her. He would even laugh softly beside her ear. So sinister. It's all thanks to Brother Mo's teachings. Bo Jiu liked to hide in the bushes, she had learned it from the Almighty. Qin Mo placed his chin on her shoulder, listening to the main point. I taught you the game. Partly. Bo Jiu's eyes lit up. How about this, I'll tell you how you chased me. Chin Mo arched a brow, his voice lazy. I chased you. Of course, I can't be the one who chased you, I'm a girl. Bo Jiu didn't look at Chin Mo when she said this. The little gangster had her guilty moments too. Chin Mo chuckled, leaning over and kissing her ears. I'm glad my sugar daddy still remembers she's a girl. Bo Jiu, then, how did I chase you? The enthusiasm of a prey couldn't be dispelled, especially when it was kept at home. Chin Mo felt her warmth, his lips curved slightly. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.